Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the Comics Aficionados, everybody. I'm your host, Wes, and I got an excellent panel for today's comic book retail industry panel. Pele, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, great. Everybody all right this morning? I've got my coffee. We're ready to rock, man. Let's do it.
How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing spectacular, brother.
Nice. And our second retailer on the panel, Perch, what's going on, buddy?
It's going great. Everything's good. Glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Glad you could make it. So should we just get right into some of the business and start talking about predatory publishing practices? I'd say so.
Yes, I wholly endorse them. I mean, what was that again?
All right. So, I just want to get, just some ideas of what predatory practices are. So the first question is for you, Perch. Do you consider overshipping comics a predatory practice?
Overshipping, no. I think overshipping is a common marketing practice. Some of the fans are against it. There's been a lot of kind of angry comments on social media about it, but really it's marketing. It's very common for a lot of goods to overship. The argument against it is that it dominates shelf space, but I would say that's only true if the retailer is incredibly foolish and just allows this comic that they got far more copies of to pump other comics out of the way. That would be a really weird decision for the retailer to make. There are lots of predatory practices. I think overshipping is marketing fundamentally, in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Perch, Pele, would you agree with that assessment?
No. Because we get charged for the shipping.
You do, yeah.
Over shippings. And some of that stuff, I just would not pay the additional shipping for it. I mean, I know it's nickel and diming and stuff like that, but honest to God, if I ordered 3 copies of Captain Marvel and got 35, which happened, by the way, they charged me an additional $6 in shipping or something for the free comics I got, the free additional comics that I got. It's like, oh, really? Well, okay. And I'm not going to sell them probably. They're going to sit in quarter bins, because I ordered 3 because 3 people wanted them.
So if you put those in quarter bins, is that a turn off for readers who come in, they want to go scour the quarter bins like, oh, sweet, 40 issues of Captain Marvel. We got Marvel Legacy.
Oh, I don't dump them all at once. That's I rarely ever do that. They'd just be stacked in the back, and then I put a few copies out. And after you put a few copies out, because I just don't have the box space. I don't have the shelf space, even in my bargain bins, to dump all the dross that gets shipped out for free. So, it's
okay.
just,
we got our first disagreement on the panel. Now let's get something to a predatory practice that Marvel's a little bit more notorious for. Pele, can you break down Marvel Comics variant cover and party variant ordering schemes and how they affect you?
Jesus Christ. Okay. Here's the thing. Most of the incentive ordering thing is pretty straightforward. You order 10, you order 25, you order 50, and you get the incentive cover. And I have customers sometimes, if I'm only going to order 5 of a particular comic, and they're like, well, I want the 1 in 10 of this comic. And I say, okay, fine. You're going to pay me $15 to cover the additional 5 comics that I've got to order. You can have it. I work out deals like that all the time. But the problem is when you're like, we're going to be doing a triptych cover. That means that you're going to have to order 25 copies of all 3 of these issues to get that one connector, or you're going to have to order, if you want 20 of these issues, then you're going to have to order, equal amounts of all of them. You're going to have to order, it's always kind of like it's always a moving target of how you're going to have to plan your ordering out. They make you jump through hoops, basically, to fulfill what the obligation is going to be. And sometimes it's over a sequence of months. So you're like, okay, that didn't sell so well, but oh shit, I've got the other 20, 30 copies that are not going to sell well either, and you're kind of pinned into a corner on that. But it's just, it's not the worst part of it. I mean, but it's still slimy, and I wish that they wouldn't do that. But unfortunately, I think that some customers have gotten, there's still variants that everyone's going to want to have. And, if it's Brooks or if it's
Campbell.
Yeah. J. Scott
Art Germ
Campbell.
variant.
Art Germ. People getting a little tired of Art Germ, I think.
Yeah, Art Germ is coming to an end, I'd say.
It's like, oh God, every woman looks exactly the same. Campbell's kind of like that, but there is at least a little bit of variation, and he has a little bit more of a flexibility to him. Campbell can do some spectacular artwork. Look at that Spawn 300 cover with the stained glass.
Yeah, amazing.
There you go. He doesn't have to just do tarts. It's not just pinup girls. But yeah, I think that Art Germ, like Perch said, is sort of coming to an end. Anyway, it kind of gets off the subject there. What do you think, Perch, about the connectors? What are your
I think the variant cover scheme is probably one of the worst aspects. I think in the top two predatory practices, it's and predatory means different things to different people, of course, but I think it's in the top three for sure. I think that
I'd put it number 3. Yeah.
Yeah, the only disagreement I have with you is I find it increasingly complicated. I mean, where Marvel's concerned, DC is more straightforward. Marvel does a lot of the you have to order different titles from the one that's selling, and over a course of months or a course of a period of time, it's hard to qualify for these. Even if you do qualify, it's not uncommon for Marvel to kind of say, "Oh, sorry, you have to qualify more by getting this," or maybe a Midtown or a Mile High achieve those numbers quicker, and so we're going to do something different for you, so you get switched out. That's the part that gets very frustrating. It's a lot to track. Diamond doesn't help that either with giving it simple to you, but it forces the retailers, if they're trying to buy a certain book, to buy books that they know absolutely are different from the book that they're selling. And
correct, it's annoying.
It is, and that stuff's shelf space. It causes retailers to have to extend more than they want to, and that to me is definitely, again, the word predatory I always take as more what they're doing to beat the competition or what they're doing to own the space, and it's not exactly that. It's more just slimy in terms of getting more of their books sold to somebody who doesn't want them, if that makes any sense. But I think it's terrible, and I think variant in general, it's one of those things that we're going to wake up one morning and the whole variant world is going to collapse, and I think we're close to that now. Our Germ isn't selling like he once did, and several of the different variant titles, the gimmicks, it's nowhere close to what it was like 4 years ago. And some people can still draw, draw money, not draw artists, but they can do it. But it's dropping fast.
Yeah, I think the last one that I really had that set the world on fire was the Venom, the Venomized Immortal Hulk, the Codex variant.
Yeah.
Everybody went spastic over it.
Some of the House of X, Powers of X stuff did well.
Yeah, those did well. The Hiddleston variants did pretty well.
But a close cousin to that, I don't know if it's on your list, but is the idea of extra pages in the comic. This is where it's not a variant. We've got an extra page. And that's where
that was my number one.
That's several levels of worse for sure.
Oh man, and I found out where the pages were from, and they were from books that were coming out 6 months later.
Yeah.
It was like
good at all.
So my God, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, this is actually a preview of, the series that's coming out in 6 months. And I was like, it just, it's driven the values up on those though.
Yeah, no, it did bring. I mean, this is why I'd say that's very predatory, is in the sense that it did bring customers in for those, but it hurt stores, it hurt ordering, it allowed stock that you didn't normally buy to come in, and it was impossible for retailers to predict what they were going to get and where. And that kind of stuff checks all the boxes of just hard for the retailers, buying more content that they want than they want, no clear insight about what you're going to get and where. That's the stuff that really hurts the industry and definitely hurts publishing. But it was, to your point, Bailey, it was retailers or readers, liked it. And they're going to do this at least twice more in the next 6 months with the incoming and then the Iron Man stuff. It's supposedly going to have the same thing.
Yeah, it's what's so baffling about that too is that you order 50 copies and they say, oh well, estimate half of them are going to be of this, or 25%, or and it varies, and sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. I've talked to stores that like, oh my god, I ordered 50 copies and only got like 5.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
I've got
people. I've got people in the pull list, and they're not going to want the regular issues. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. So from a consumer perspective, the variant desirability has been slowly and exponentially decreasing over the past, I'd say, 3 years. And I'm seeing a lot more variants just sit on shelves that didn't before. One in 25s, one in 50s that just are sitting. So
yeah, and there were a lot with X-Men #1. Oh, I'm sorry, Wes, but with X-Men #1, there were a lot of variants people were hoping to get, and there was all this. I hope I can find. And then there was stock everywhere for it. They just weren't going. So you're getting that. Sorry, Wes.
So, yeah, no problem. Hey, Doc, I remember you said you're on like a distro list for variant covers people are looking to sell, and all of a sudden you started noticing an increase in the amount of offers you were getting on what's available. Is that still going on?
Oh yeah. Everything is much more plentiful. Books, even I think what it is 7-8 years ago when they really started, actually I guess it was closer to 10 when they really started pushing this more and more frequent variants and on obscure issues too. It's now become, back then it was on like issue 526, that nothing particularly interesting happened in, but there'd be 3 variants for no particular reason. People would, they were still much more difficult to find. Now you can find them anywhere. I mean, I've been filling in a couple of the, because I kind of just started dipping out on them, but I'm starting to find them in dollar bins, books that even 2 years ago were still $15-20. Now I'm finding them in dollar bins.
Here's an interesting take on that too. Is you've got some issues like House of X #2, House of X #1. Those are about $20 books, $25 back issues now, except for the Scotty Young variant, which is like you're lucky if you get $5 for it.
Yeah,
it's like people are sick of some of the artists that are doing the variants, and they're just not buying them. So. It's just, I don't order Scotty Young variants unless somebody particularly asks for it, because, the cuteness and the, oh, isn't that adorable? Look at the little Wolverine chasing a butterfly, that's just, okay. That was funny about 5-6 years ago.
Well, I think even Liefeld was commenting on it, maybe yesterday, about they're kind of going in a circle here, because he was talking about a history lesson that they were marking, quote, history lesson. There were marketing and editorial minds in the comic industry that believed that those sales referencing X-Men 1, Spider-Man 1, and X-Force 1 could be repeated with acetate covers, glow-in-the-dark covers, die-cut covers. None of these things caught a fraction of what our fans delivered.
Exactly.
And the point he's making there is that it's about, you can fool people for a while with gimmicky crap, but at the end of the day, the content between the covers is going to be much more important in the long-term viability than the cover you slap on the outside.
I'll tell you what kind of throws mixed signals, and I do want to kind of I'm going to throw a little bit of shade on customers, just a little bit, just a tiny bit of shade. All right, just a little bit. But they give mixed signals sometimes, because you end up with, they came out with the Ghost Rider #1 came out a little while ago. There was a 1,500 print run of it that was those glow in the dark New York City Comic Con variants. You could only get them in New York City Comic Con, and they were selling them at the con for $20. Okay, because they were, they're numbered, limited numbered, glow in the dark covers, beautiful, gorgeous covers, and they sold out within like 5 minutes. I mean, just they were gone. And then they shot up to like $40-50 online overnight. And I got somebody to pick up, it was 7 copies, and I sold 5 of them through the shop. The store manager wanted one, I took one. We sold 5 of them through the shop. I sold them for $40 a piece and made all my money back and then some. And literally, as soon as we put them out on the shelf, they were gone. So, and that kind of stuff, they're like, oh man, we should have done a 5,000 print run. We should have done this. Look, these special covers are awesome. People want them again. And it throws mixed signals. It's just,
it does, and it doesn't. There is a market for them, but the problem is the market is small for them. And a lot of the times you're going to have, a lot of those 1,500, I guarantee, were picked up by people like you. People that were intending to flip it. They had no interest in it or little interest in it for their own collection, passing interest. The reason why you really had interest is because you were able to essentially get it for free.
Right.
At the end of the day.
They sold quickly. I mean, what I'm saying though is when I put them out in the shop, they were gone.
That makes sense. I mean, the thing with variants is the market certainly can take, and wants, collectors want a few of them. They want things that are special. They want things that are nostalgic. I mean, if they had put out a Ghost Rider variant that had the glow in the dark, like Xterra style, and that was kind of what this was. They'll buy that. The challenge is that what readers don't want, what customers don't want, is like 20 variants for a single comic, and then issue 2
exactly
20 variants, or the artist. You made the reference to Scotty Young. I think that's a good one. Scotty Young did really well at the beginning, and then it's like, here is the 80th Scotty Young cover, and it's like you killed it. You just went too much. And so if the publishers want to do variants like 1 variant, 2 variants, and it's closer to what DC used to do, although looking at January, they're loading up, so they're chasing Marvel for sure with variants. But if you do just 1 or 2, the readers, the customers are going to like that, and I think that makes sense, and it's decent for the business. The only problem is when you completely flush the market, and that's where I think, circling back, that's the predatory practice, is that we're just dumping at that point, and you are hooking a handful of collectors. Yeah, there you go.
That one right there, that is amazing. Sorry, my hair is all screwed up rather than have my camera on.
Well,
I brushed my hair this morning. But anyway, that one right there. This one was huge too. So
do a few variant covers. It's okay. It's the 20, 30, and it's this constant mess. I'll say something controversial. When the USA Avengers did the 50 comic for each state, that wasn't a bad idea in the sense that you had something that at least tied to something else. You had a USA, 50 states, 50 covers. That makes some level of sense. It was too much, and those didn't go up in value, but fine. But just pace yourself. The problem with the industry and why so much of this stuff is predatory is that these publishers use very amateur marketing and publishing techniques. And then they are surprised when they blow up. It's like they have no restraint. They can't do one period. They have to do 50, and they have to do every month.
Yeah, because if one is good, then 73 is 73 times as good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's short-sighted thinking. It's like you have an executive who comes into the job. They're trying to succeed right out the gate in the first 6 months, and they have no vision beyond that 6 months. And that's comics in a nutshell. It's people with extremely short-term thinking that stumble across something good and then almost immediately blow it up because they can't set a long-term business strategy.
Yeah, they don't have the concept of moderation is just completely foreign to them. Sorry,
so when I did my comic sales analysis 2 months ago, I noticed there was an enormous drop in Immortal Hulk and Amazing Spider-Man sales, and I talked to Perch and I talked to Pele, and I was like, "Hey, what happened here?" And they're like, "Oh, they dropped some of the variant cover, or the party cover schemes, and the variant incentive ordering, and it literally dropped the sales 10 to 30% in 1 month's time." So, do you think are they getting a 10 to 30% bump on all those titles, or does it have to be something like Spider-Man or Immortal Hulk?
Yeah, it has to be some. It's not all.
Right.
It will work for certain, but take your average kind of lower mid-selling comic, and I think your variant is at least 10 to 15%, at least. And then you go higher up, and it's going to be further. I've heard some anecdotal.
Can everyone else hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like Perch went out a little bit.
I could still hear him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Sorry.
Now I can hear you. Sorry.
StreamYards did
I was
something
just
weird.
going to say, anecdotally, on House of X, Powers of X, I've heard that the variants for those titles make up about 35% of the sales, especially toward the end.
Yeah.
Don't know if that number's right, but it did come from somebody within Marvel, so I think it's probably somewhere around that level. If so, that's kind of frightening in that the sense that title did well and it had the reverse curve up for sales, which is great. But that high-end number is dangerous, and if you take that plus the fact that we're going to be heading to 11 comics within Dawn of X to 12 comics by February, a month, that again has all the signs of taking something really good and driving it into the ground.
So real quick, I want to thank Peter Cimetti, a publisher from Alterna Comics, for being here. He's got a cheeky little joke that I have on the screen right now. But if you think the comic prices are too high right now, I highly suggest going out and checking out Alterna Comics. All their comics are priced between $1 and $2 for new comics. And you can get 80-page giants right now for $5 that they're publishing, and they're full complete stories, and it's amazing.
And if you're in the Northwest or the Northeast, rather, actually all the way down to the Mid-Atlantic, you can go to Sheets and pick up some comics while you're getting an MTO. It's brilliant.
Wait, hey, glad Peter is here. Hey, Peter, and we got to get back together again. I need to reach out to you. Got a bunch of stuff for you.
Yes, we should definitely do another one of those comic industry roundtables, similar to what we're doing now, but with a even bigger focus than just the retailer market. So, Perch, I have one final question before we move on to the next topic. What are the other predatory practices in the industry that you can name right now, just real quick?
Well, I mean, I could tell you that it's happened in the past and still happens where there will be offers given to larger shops from a publisher to give them free marketing or make sure people go to their stores for a signing or other things. But in return, they have to promote their publisher over another. There's been certain cases like that. Marvel's certainly done bits like that. I think the other, it's incentive to sell and own the shelf space. And the more that you have publishers doing that with kind of a promise of you're going to downplay DC, or, there's if you've gone into a comic shop and you've seen their wall and they're separated by Marvel and DC and Image, separated by publisher, and you notice that Marvel has the shelf space first, and DC is down the row or just further away. There's a decent chance that the reason they did that is because there was an offer made to that store to get some people in for a signing or do something that required that shelf space be closest to the register, closest to people who first walk in. That kind of stuff is, again, it's normal business. It's companies fighting each other for space and other things, but it's not helpful in the long run. It is short-sighted, and it's an attempt to kind of manipulate the store and the market for the good of one publisher over another. And if you buck away from that, then suddenly you find yourself getting less marketing support, or maybe less from your diamond rep in a roundabout way. There's little things like that have been tried a lot, and I suspect as Disney gets more involved, you'll see more of that, because Disney's legendary for kind of wanting to own and manage how the store is, and I think that'll happen.
One of the things was, the Marvel. I don't talk to my Marvel rep very often, but she was like, we can see our way close to as much as 7 or 8 points off of your dealer cost if if you optimize your new comic wall. And so it's nothing major. We just want the Marvel up on the upper tier, and then the others can be on the bottom tier. And I was like, I run alphabetical order.
Yeah.
And and I said, if you want all the Marvel to be in the upper tier, I wouldn't suggest having titles
Like
that
X-Men.
have a G or higher.
It's a tough line. It's also a case where they have to be careful, though I don't know that people always are, where you can offer marketing incentives, you can offer people to come in and sign, you can offer these kind of fringe benefits. If you start getting into actual cash for those kinds of trades, then you start getting into some legality issues, and I'm not always sure people are aware of those things.
I say that, by the way, I did say that kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, because one of the things is I bucked that because X-Men was so popular, and I have like all the X titles now on the premium right-hand side of the wall up, the upper right-hand side. All of them are block right up there, because frankly, that's what people are running in to get. So, but anyway, there's a little tongue in cheek there, but not completely. Not completely.
I think
and that just offered me a naked discount, and I'm like, that's not enough, and it's not. I'm not going to do that. To my customers, because that puts them out if they're looking for DC titles, and it inconveniences them. I'd rather just have I need to look and see for Captain America. There we go. And just go on their way.
I think the thing for everybody to, for people listening and people who haven't run a shop, not a publisher, not a distributor, I mean, there's a constant battle, of course, for people to dominate the space and for the companies to win over the others. And that's normal. That's capitalism. That's people trying to get their best product forward, and that's healthy in a sense. But at the same time, some of these schemes are being done by people with little understanding of business, or people who do not have MBAs, but maybe worked at Kinko's 2 years before, and the no shade on Kinko's, but whatever. I guess FedEx store now. Those are the people making some of these business decisions that are then impacting you as a customer, and it's why the store often feels disjointed. Or if you've got a store that's maybe popular but still struggling in the market it's in, that's why you'll see very strange things happen to the shelves, or very kind of lopsided promotions come out. It's because they're trying to navigate these very tricky waters.
Well, that is a perfect segue, Perch. Now, our next topic is going to be common mistakes that retailers have. My first question is for you, Pele. What do you think is the single biggest inhibitor to success for comic book retailers?
They don't start out with enough capital. They underestimate the amount of capital it's going to take and the inventory it's going to take to launch a successful comic book store. And I've seen it over and over and over again. You know, they launch, they have about 3 or 4 months of operating expense money, and they haven't factored in much in the way of overhead. They are going to plan to run it all themselves, and they have like a girlfriend or somebody like that. They have no other support staff. And, you know, I can, you know, if a new store here, I hear about a new store, I go there to visit, and, you know, and I can tell within like 5 minutes if they're going to be around next year, you know, and, that would be, I'd say the number one is they underestimate the amount of money it's going to take to get started.
Perch, would you agree with that, or do you have a different idea of what the biggest inhibitor for success in the comic retail market is?
Biggest, I mean, I don't know if it's biggest, but it's high. I agree with Pele. I think a lot of people get into the business without business experience. As a retailer, you haven't run a shop, or you've been a comic fan all this time. I have a video at some point coming up, or maybe it's already gone. I don't know. The way I do videos is odd. I understand that, but it's the purpose of those. It's okay to love comics and not have to be in the business. In fact, more people should get comfortable with that idea. Just because you love comics for your entire life doesn't mean you're equipped to run a shop, and shouldn't. You need to have some ability to run a business, and that's starting out with capital. It's understanding that you have to pay taxes. That's a thing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of little things there, and I watch these shops come up that are clearly in over their heads. They haven't thought about the fact they're going to have to pay people beyond themselves unless they want to work all day, every day, or have very weird hours. So it's just not being equipped to actually deal with running a store, and all of those things. I mean, 90% of that has nothing to do with comics. It's running a business, and that's, some people are good, some people are bad at it, and I think it's that knowledge, that insight, and as Pele said, that capital. I've heard a anecdote of, how do you make $2 million as a comic retailer? Well, you start with $2 million.
Yeah.
Maybe not that grim, but it's that you have to be thinking that way. You're not going to be turning a profit for 6 months or a year unless you're very lucky. And if you are, then great, success. But just don't walk into it expecting that it's going to be like Clerks and super fun and you're just going to get rich. That's not going to happen. I think the other one is, it's how you manage your stock. And this is more for retailers who sell new comics and old comics. I know that's a little different than your shop, Pele, but it's projecting what you're going to sell. And the basic rule of thumb is, you want to sell out. You don't want to sell out on week 1, however. You want to sell out right around week 5. When the second issue comes out, or the next issue, you still want to have a few copies, not many, on the shelf so people can pick up both. And you want to just kind of, so the thing I've heard is, get 75% of your comics sold on week 1 is a big success, and then drops to maybe 10%, and then 5%, and then it kind of trickles off from there. And that's a good curve. And a lot of people, make the mistake on one end or the other. Either they order too little and they're sold out on day 1, which sounds like a good thing, but it's not actually.
No, it's very bad.
Yeah. Or you way over order because you're like, this is going to be a big issue. I want it in the boxes. And then, if you sell 15% on week 1, you're screwed. You just know that that's a curve that's going to go the wrong way. So it's stuff like that I think you just have to think through and, think like a business person, not like a fan, unfortunately.
Yeah. That was like the House of X, Powers of X. I started out 120, 125. This was the House of X number 1. And I kind of underestimated because I'd gotten a lot of buzz, but it hadn't really reached a frenzy like it's eventually turned into. And increased my orders till finally at the end I was ordering, I think number 6 of each issue was 300 copies.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have some. And it was intentional because I even went beyond the 5 weeks and I was thinking I want 10% of my order, 10 to 15% of my order for back issues for the next year. And I could just bag them. I can mark them up a bit and have them available because people are going to need this as kind of like a codex, going into the future, of these titles.
So Pele, how much does it hurt when something like a Batman Dan comes out, all of a sudden there's a controversy and everyone's coming into the shop for this comic book, and you have to tell them they're going to be back. I'll have new orders in 2 weeks. Does it just?
Yeah. Well, the problem, Batman Damn #1, I did order a substantial number of them, but it was not enough. I should have saw this coming because the dealer preview had and nobody really looks at them real closely, and I had it, and I either didn't think about it or it just kind of like okay, yeah, whatever, it's dingling, and who cares, but apparently a lot of people cared.
Yeah, nobody saw that penis in the preview. Well, the quality too. The quality in the of what you saw. I'm now going back to my memory, and I believe there's some controversy. It wasn't clear in the preview that
it was. You could make it out, but it wasn't like as pronounced.
Yeah. But, I mean, who goes into a dealer preview going, "Let's find the penis"? It's not like
it's not like that. It's kind of like this is an adult comic book, and I wasn't even really thinking about, oh my god, it's the Batawang, but but anyway, it sold. Yeah, it was gone. They were gone by 6 o'clock Wednesday. Every issue was gone, and I was like, oh god, it sucks. And so what I did was I was like, okay, I'm not doing this. And I got in the car and got my boy with me, and went to the other comic book shops, and I paid cover price. And I just loaded up. I said, how many years? What do you got? What do you got? Okay, fine, I'll take them. Whatever you got left. And I went back to the shop, put them on the, and I said, well, I'm not going to sell them for cover price because I have to pay more for them. And I put a little note saying I had to pay more for these. I had to go, and I marked them up accordingly. So, and then by the end of the week, they were selling for $40 a copy. So
you would rather, go and go out of pocket and take even more risk than have people come to your store and not find the comic for that week.
Correct. That's just me though. So, and a lot of people wouldn't, and that's fine. That's fine. But it's just like and if and I've had a lot of situations where I get undershipped or the shipment gets damaged, or that's another one. Perch and I could probably go on for an hour about damage from Diamond.
Yeah, that's not predatory. That's incompetence. But
that's just incompetent stupidity. Yeah, but it's. But anyway, and that happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. But unless you just want to hop in the car and go and track down what the competitors have and buy their inventory, bring it back. But you're by the same token, are people want to pay for your cost associated with that? So in that situation, I knew they would, because this, that issue was setting the world on fire at that point. So
Perch, we have Alternus Peter Samedi coming in. He says, I like to see stores promoting previews and pre-ordering more in their shops. Maybe it's just me, but I've been about 30 stores in my time, and only 2 ever mentioned a pull list or pre-ordering to me. Do you see that as a common mistake at comic book shops?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it varies by region. I think in the Seattle area, at least, people are pretty hip to the idea that there's a pull box, and I find it gets pushed pretty aggressively. I'll go in, somebody won't recognize me. They'll say you should open a pull box. I'm like, no, I've got that covered. Thanks. But it depends. But then at the same time, I go down to Los Angeles, or I'm going to be down in Florida here in a week, and you can go from store to store and get nothing. People just they're content, and it's almost more. I'd take it a level above that, where if you walk into a store and you've got a clerk or you've got a manager, you've got whoever, who's active and, not in your face, like, what do you want? What do you want? But at least, ready to answer your questions, clearly, engaged in the business. Or you have somebody sitting in the back, maybe reading a comic. I've had people who are just, doing something on their laptop and completely no interest in anything else going on. If you guys have heard videos of mine where it sounds like there's a little cut frequently throughout the video, it's because somebody's coming in and I'm interrupting myself. That's happened.
Yeah.
You should. But a common mistake is just people who are not paying much attention to what's going on. And this relates to what Peter's saying of, people are coming in, they're buying comics, they show some interest, or, you're all self-aware and you see that they've been in before, or whatever it happens to be. And you're just engaging them with, we have a pull box, we have this, we've got this previews. Would you like to get on the reservation list? Hey, this customer is talking about a new comic they're excited about. Well, why don't you secure it with by reserving it? That's just good common business sense. But, again, like the first statement, it's people don't do it. And it's, they should mention it. I agree with what Peter says, but I think it's a bigger topic than just pre-ordering. It's just being engaged with your customer. I make sure everybody listening to this right now has had the experience of going in a store, and it's like you could have gone in and just picked up some long boxes and just walked out the door with it, and the clerk would not have noticed.
Right. Yeah. The lack of engagement on the part of the clerks in a lot of places, even the places near me, is abysmal.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're
sitting there watching the movie that's on TV, or they're doing something else. They're playing on their phone. God, phones.
Yeah.
It's like I've got a drawer at the shop, and when you come in and you clock in, you take your phone out of your damn pocket, you silence it or turn it off, you put it in the drawer. We close the drawer. You get your phone when you go on break, or you go to lunch, or when you leave. You're not fiddling with it. You don't have it on your person when you're in the shop. The manager and I are the only people that are going to have phones. No one else needs to take calls during the workday, because it's work. It's a job, and, if they don't like it, maybe working in my shop is not right for them.
Be the death of my entire Twitter account right there. But it's true. I am not. You don't do tweets while there's somebody trying to engage you. If there's somebody kind of right there shopping, you don't sit there and play Candy Crush or whatever it happens to be. Just and this isn't comics. This is stores, and it's increasing. The next 10 years or so, we're going to see especially if there's a recession, we're going to see a shift to the successful stores are going to be ones that really prioritize customer experience. And that's
exactly
engagement and all the rest.
So Perch, I want to ask you, since you've gotten into the retail business, what's the biggest mistake you personally made since you started?
Not understanding the local taxes and laws and things. I think that's been huge. I think if you're going to open a shop or you're going to do anything, you are not, chances are you're not going to be building it like a house in your own little environment. You're going to be part of some kind of association. You're going to be subject to a lot of other rules and other laws and other fees that are not in your face coming up. You don't know what they are. And, just being aware that the state and local, taxes and fees and other things are going to wildly vary at times. And somebody's going to say, hey, this municipality is going to want to put in traffic cameras. So congratulations, it's more money for you. And it's all those things. Or, hey, you have a success. This is one that hit me many times. You have a successful comic where a bunch of people are going to show up on the same day. I remember this happened with Death of Superman. It's a way, way back for everybody. Most people were not born probably when this. Anyway, when that came out, a bunch of people parked, and then suddenly you're getting calls from the association saying, "Hey, you've got too many people visiting your shop. We're going to put an extra surcharge on you because you're clogging up the parking lot." I mean, it's garbage like that. That's the stuff you never see coming, and it's hit me again and again and again. And I think the other one, this is a lesson I learned once and got it the first time, is you cannot trust the previews. You cannot trust the solicitations at all. Mm-hmm. And this is where I've gotten into fairly epic fights with Tom Brevoort of, look, what your editors write in that catalog is garbage. So you are not at all representing the comic that comes in later. and so you just cannot trust it at all. And so you have to be on top of all the news that comes out from first solicitation to final order cutoff of what's changing. Very common in solicitations, like, hey, this comic is drawn by Jim Lee. And then by the time final order cutoff's like, hey, this comic's kind of inspired by Jim Lee, but it's actually drawn by this guy we found in the Honduras you've never heard of before, but good order high.
Yeah. Or even better, Batman and Catwoman are actually going to get married in issue number 50. You're going to need to order. You're going to need to order 1,000 copies, because this is going to be the comic that changes the comic industry for the next decade.
And we're encouraging everyone to set up their own wedding ceremonies with cakes.
Never be encouraged by anything. No, don't dress up your shop people like Hydra. Just don't do it. Just sell the comic.
We did the wedding cake, and I had 4 people on staff. We did the wedding cake. We did all that stuff because my wife thought it would be really cute. So she got the little Batman, Catwoman figures to put on the cake. And, and it was just, by the time that the leaks came out, I felt the ball in the pit of my stomach. And I was
I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you want to tell people how much DC bilked you out of your own money promoting their comic book?
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty ugly. It was I don't want to go into details. But it was pretty damn ugly. And we ended up with 12 people that came in for the midnight release. And I was expecting like hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And
all right. While Pele's a little bit depressed, we want to say thank you very much to Peter Simetti from Alterna Comics for joining us for the first 45 minutes and bring up some great points. Thanks a lot, Pete.
But anyway, what were you talking about specifically? What do you mean? What was that?
You mean just cost? No, I mean it's a good question. It's
how much
you're talking about the amount of my money. I mean, I was
like DC didn't reimburse you for the cake and the figurines.
No.
The staff to be in there at midnight. This was all your money to promote their book.
Yeah. And what was especially bad about that was that they were suggesting, the number of employees that you would need, everything like that, to handle the crushing wave of customers that were going to come in and buy your comic. And all of the variants, all of the, it wasn't just the regular covers, it was all the variant covers too that I ordered. And
the entire lead up to the event that you're like, oh, people are going to want these once the wedding happens. You can bundle them all up, right?
I had 1,000 copies, and I never order 1,000. Nothing or gets 1,000 copies. If I could go back, maybe Immortal Hulk #2, I would have ordered 1,000 copies of, but a couple of issues like that, if I could, hindsight could go back, but no, they took them back.
Yeah, they had to make them returnable, which is unheard of.
I was one of the people that was screaming at Diamond on the phone. I said, "This is false advertising." I said, well, it's not. Yes, it is. I read him the previews. I read him what they sent, all the promotional material that DC sent out. And I said, and I've got my attorney on the other line. I said, and I am going to take this to court. I said, I don't care if it costs me $20,000. I'm going to take this to court, and I'm going to make sure that this shit doesn't happen again.
Well, also Dan Didio in an interview said the wedding was going to happen.
Yeah, he absolutely is going to happen. King said it's absolutely going to happen.
Well, King was a little bit more. He was a little bit more cryptic about it, wasn't he?
Out. Yeah, he said.
He said the event will happen.
He said the event will happen, and he said it's definitely going to be a wedding issue. Which, but it was funny. You can go back through the archives. I've gotten in some very funny fights over the years, but this is one of them in Twitter where I said this wedding will not happen, and just go look at the amount of people who were both pros and fans who were in my face saying no, absolutely not, it's going to happen. I'm too big a person to go in and laugh at them all now, but one day.
That was one of my biggest mistakes.
Was that your biggest mistake, or do you have one that you regret more?
Much more. Much more. Oh, was
you
it my turn?
About that one? Yeah.
Okay, my turn. I was a partner. I was kind of a silent partner in the shop that I have now. And I was kind of like a money guy, and I did the accounting and stuff like that. And I tried to make sure that the comic shop ran well. And I owned a 50% equity stake, but I kind of just made sure that everything ran financially well. And but the guy, my business partner, decided he wanted to retire and ride his Harley across the country, and while he still had about 10 years left, he's like 63, 64, retired, and wanted to ride his Harley with his wife on the back of it and off into the sunset. And I was like, fine, and I bought him out, and I had a vision of the way I wanted the shop to be, and did not factor in space requirements. And it was, that was basically it. I did not factor how much room it was going to take up to do what I wanted to do. And so I'd knock down walls, had to expand. Fortunately, I own the building. I'm not on a lease, but still had to go through crazy hoops as far as,
permits.
Oh God. I ended up just paying the county adjuster. I just gave him an envelope. And
oh my goodness.
And it wasn't a huge envelope, but I gave him an envelope and I said, "This is my permit money." He goes, "What?" I said, "This is my permit money." And he looks at it and he looks at the envelope. He looks inside and he goes, "I'll get everything squared."
Pele admitting to bribery on YouTube.
It was my payment. It wasn't
bribery.
It was no.
Get to the front of the line.
It was the wheel greasing, and the it was my permit money.
But money for those listening later, it was just the permit money.
It was permit money.
This is not
down payment on future expansion.
Yes,
and I've never had a problem. I've never had a problem with codes. So it's the way it is. But and I had to basically double my floor space. That was essentially what happened, because I had it in my mind that New Comics were going to just take a big wet dump, and I wanted to make sure that I had the room to do the back issue sales that I needed to do to make sure the shop was going to be profitable. And and I bought out a whole bunch of store inventories. I was going, whatever I heard anywhere in the Southeast, anywhere in the Eastern United States, I heard that a shop was going out of business. I was there with a truck and a check. So, and I did that many, many times. And, or if I found that a shop went out of business 10 years ago and the guy threw all the comics into a storage locker, I was there with a truck and a check, and that's how I built up my inventory. But that's another thing that new comic book shop owners don't, that was where they screw up, is inventory. They think, well, I've got a pretty good comic collection. I've got these other, I've got a good comic collection and I'm going to be fine. And they are fine at first, or they underestimate. But anyway, they're fine at first, but they're not taking in new comics.
They're not projecting the churn out.
Yeah, they're not buying people's collections that come in. They're just taking that profit and they're going, woohoo, they spend it. Or woohoo, they pay their bills or anything like that. And they're buying new comics to come into the shop. But then all their back issues, all the good back issues are gone. And all they have left are
dollar bin filler.
Yeah, they're left with fodder left. And then all the people go somewhere else. One of the things that I've found is that, you want to pay a decent amount for the books that you get in. And I'm always buying every single day, there's not a day that goes by we're not buying somebody's comics. And and I advertise that, with the people. I'm like, we buy collections, we buy comics. I will pay more than anybody else for those comics. And typically, on the low end for filler stuff and everything like that, I'll pay, I'll pay probably 25 to 40% for bulk, and stuff like that. Stuff that fills up the 50-cent bins and stuff like that. That's fine. The dollar bins, that's fine. The more valuable books, I'll, I've spent 60, 70% of fair market value for comics before. And I sell for 100 to 110%. I don't gouge. I don't try to get a whole bunch of extra money off somebody. I'm turning over those comics as fast as I can. And like New Teen Titans #2, I sold 32 copies last year. And some shops I can go to, they've had the same copy on the wall for 2 years. They've got it for $150. It's probably about a 9.2 on a good day, and it's still sitting there, and I'm like, well, why don't you just drop it to $110, $100, blow it out the door, take that money, you buying other people's collections. Oh, well, I want to get the most I can out of it.
I saw it on eBay.
And that's not feasible. That's not the way it works. There's a few books that I've got that, I'm wanting top dollar for because, Giant Size X-Men #1 or something like that, or Hulk 181, 180, it's probably, a decent amount over fair market value because those books command that here. But for the most part, it's right down the line on fair market value, and I pay a good amount for them, and I charge, a fair amount for them. And just churn. You got to make sure that you're churning your back issue inventory, and you're optimizing it, and you're getting it out the door just as readily as you can, and
like butter, baby.
Yeah, you got to keep it. You got to keep the wheels greased, and a lot of store owners don't understand that, and they're going to say, "Well, I want to get the top dollar I possibly can for my back issues," and I'm like, you've got to be moving those things. You've got to be moving it. You got to be moving it like new comics. You got to think of it like new comics. You get these in, you grade them, you got them on the shelf, or you get them in, you clean and press them, you send them off to CGC, you get them graded, bring them back, and you move those things. And the more you move, okay, you're not going to double your money on it, but you know what? You're still going to make 40 or 50%. And you've got that money available, and it's already going into somebody else's collection, and I don't ever want a situation where somebody comes in with a long box of comics and I'm just not available, that I'm not interested,
that's a good transition, Pele. We're going to move on from the common mistakes and let's talk about some of the best practices. And, so I have like a little analogy here. Like, you can start up a restaurant and you can have the best baked potatoes in town, but if you only sell baked potatoes, the next time there's like an agricultural crisis and the amount of potatoes available goes in half, you've lost your business because you haven't diversified your risk at all. So you need to diversify your risk. And in comics, there's several ways to do it. You can have Funko Pops, which seem to bring in some foot traffic, but don't really sell. You can do tabletop gaming, but if you do tabletop gaming, you have to have gaming tables, and those guys tend to sit there and not leave. Do you really want a bunch of guys not buying product, sitting around looking at your customers? So this is for you specifically, Perch. What do you do to diversify your business to mitigate your financial risk?
I mean, things you mentioned, of course, you need to have a good mix of what you're selling and what you have, because at any moment, one of those elements, including back issues, but new and games or pops or cards or shirts or scripts or whatever you happen to sell, something is going to impact those at some point. Maybe not permanently, but there's always error. There's waves of things that are going to happen. But the smartest thing I think a shop can do right now is, and I referenced it earlier, is be in the customer experience business. Your job is to help customers who are coming in have a bigger experience than just going in, finding something on the shelf or in a box, taking it to register, giving you cash, and walking away. Your goal is to create halo marketing and halo sales, where if they're wanting this comic, what else might they be interested in? They're wanting to learn more about it to expand. You should be thinking expansion in terms of your customers and what they're buying and what they're interested in and what they don't know. There's more comics in this store than anybody most likely coming in is going to realize. So what else can you tell them? Can you tell them where, you know, the penciler or the issue that they thought looked good, where they started, what other issues they've done, what are the other things they can do? And I think that's the biggest thing a shop can do right now, is be in the customer experience business, understand that you're not just moving whatever the good happens to be. You're having to provide the extra that's going to connect the customer to your store and to you for a longer period of time. I think Pele referenced it a little bit with just being available when people are bringing comics in. It's that interaction, that experience. It's not just, you know, bodies in, bodies out. You know, Midtown can get away with that, certainly. Golden Age in Seattle can get away with that. There's always the one big store that just has a lot of foot traffic, maybe because where they are. But generally, you have to provide more than just the book or the property you're selling. You have to give people more. I think that's the biggest thing. And certainly don't go all in on whatever the gimmick is, whether it's, you know, Pogs in the 90s or whether it's Funkos today. They are going to come and go. So, you know, have some in there to fill the gaps. If you're going to do that, that's fine. But I, you know, you can tell a healthy comic shop, at least in my mind, of, do they have the Funko Pops that are relevant to comics, or do they have a whole other host of, you know, do they have the Westworld Pops and the Game of Thrones Pops? And I mean, just how far are they going? Are they sticking to their brand, or are they extended out to, you know, all places? Pele, what do you think? What are the best practices in your mind?
Well, I don't have Pops, but I do a lot of sideshow.
Okay,
and,
the statues.
Yeah, I do a lot of the premium statues, and and I know a lot of people don't have $800 to spend on a statue, but I do the premium, and I do the small busts and stuff like that, and they're like $40, $30 or $40.
Have you thought about doing like some of like the artifacts?
Yeah,
Okay.
The problem with those is availability. They're usually, by the time that you know, unless you're Johnny on the spot, it's gone. And the thing I like about the higher end ones is they're typically going to have those on hand, and they do sell well if you price them aggressively, and you don't just buy crap that you know that's you know, oh, this Black Panther, you know, this one Black Panther that came out that was, you know, limited to 250, I think it was, and $2,500. It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, and nobody's going to want it unless they're just the biggest Black Panther fan in the whole freaking world. So, you know, but I'll tell you what, I get a black cat. There was this black cat one that came in that was designed by
Campbell. I have.
Oh my God. And there was the 1 1/8 size that was $1,200.
Yeah, I have it.
And you know, if I'd have gotten a dozen of them, I would have sold a dozen of them for $1,200. You know, and I got 3, and I got 2 because 2 people wanted them, and I wanted 1 for the store, and I didn't get, you know, it didn't last 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that was I didn't expect that. Yeah.
Well, you know, you know something there, Pele. I think in terms of, I think as a retailer, somebody selling comics, this goes for fans too, by the way, anybody. Understand the companies lie in the sense of when they say this is really good, you should definitely buy this. This is going to be limited and it is incredible. Understand it's being written by somebody at the publisher end or maybe at Diamond or wherever it happens to be. Mm-hmm. It's written by the company desperately trying to move that crap. And that bears no resemblance to what will or won't move in your store. That's going to be you understanding your customers and understanding your market. And if you have a market that's into statues, great, go with statues. If you have a market that's into Funko, go for that.
Right.
Just know the best, probably even bigger in customer experience. The best practice you have is know your customers, know who they are, know what they want, sell accordingly. They're in charge of what's going on, not the distributor, not the company that's going to tell you, hey, this comic is going to be really incredible. You're definitely going to want to order this comic. That you should always treat with great suspicion.
Yeah. T-shirts sell really well. Primary character T-shirts sell really well for me, for us. Posters, primary character posters, especially primary female character posters, sell extremely well. Especially if they're done by Campbell, somebody like that. But those sell really well. And one thing that a lot of store owners, I think, underestimate is how well they can do on selling comic supplies. Having good premium quality comic supplies, having Mylars, having the really nice, double buffered boards, that are glossy on both sides, stuff like that. Because collectors, especially you get into higher end collectors, they're going to want to buy Mylars. If in any book in my shop that's sold that's over $50 has a Mylar. It's at a Mylar with a nice double buffered board, usually 2 or 3. And if it's well, I won't say over $50, say like $75, $80. But and if it's over like a certain amount, it automatically, we make sure that it leaves in a top loader. And people buy top loaders like crazy. They buy boards like crazy. They buy, all those supplies, short boxes, long boxes, folios. You've got to have room for all that stuff. And best practices is to have a lot of, have the extra space to accommodate those storage needs, storage material needs.
So, Perch, I know I've heard you talk about you wanted to have like comic drawing lessons or where people can bring their kids in and they can have an experience that goes beyond reading comics. Have you started that? Is that something that you're still interested in?
Yeah, that's going to be something with the launch. I didn't go into it with the mistakes earlier, but that was my last adventure was in a partnership. And so that's how I pulled myself out. That was a story for another time, but it's an ugly story. But the new shop, we have extra space, and so we're getting that ready. We're going to have this idea that we're going to hold drawing classes, and it's a different approach. It may not work at all. I think in this market, there's a hungry desire for more activities for parents to do things with kids, and more desire to get their kids into things. And I think this is Seattle, of course, that general area. So that's going to be more. Indoor activities for kids. Yeah, that's going to work well here because nobody wants to go outside most of the time. But so that's something we're going to do. It's I'm curious to try it. I'm going into it with some skepticism. I did do a lot of research about other places in the area that have offered this and how much money they made, and it's been successful. But I like it in terms of a business strategy because it's a place where you can have these people who are aging up in terms of comic collectors. They're still buying, and I've got many of these who have their pull list and they're putting in $200, $250, a month in monthlies. There's still those people out there, but now they're older and they've got kids. So now they want to get their kids into comics. The kids are not, at the same time, they're not going to hand their kid House of X and say, hey, read this on the way home. They're going to destroy it. So they want their kids to get into something. So this is an opportunity to have the kid experience something with comics, learn how to draw. So that's the idea. What I like about it is that it's a revenue stream that is going to
Doc's eating chips.
Chips.
Sorry.
No worries. I think it's a good plan because it's going to bring in business and foot traffic on days that aren't Tuesday and Wednesday, where you have new comics coming in, and it's good fee, and parents will pay silly money to have their kids learn something, and so we'll see. Or maybe I'll be on in 6 months.
I think it sounds really interesting. I'm a big incentives guy. I like one of the things that we did recently that worked extremely well is X titles, back issue X titles 10% off if you had the new X titles in your pull list.
Yeah,
and that set the back issues on fire. Because people are going, oh gosh, I can go get the Claremont run that I've been wanting. And the incentives in the
back issue incentives stacked. So if you know that 1 weekend a month that I have 1 weekend a month, 10% off all back issues, and then they can stack that with the additional 10%. So it's like just and just people walking up with like a short box full of back issues and stuff like that. That always makes me smile. Mm-hmm. So incentives are great. You've really got to people. I won't say that they're tight-fisted right now with their money, but you've got to give them a good reason to want to let go of it, and it's and you've got to provide them value. To do that, you've got to provide them value, and I'm sure that Perch probably
plenty.
He has his own incentives and stuff in sales. And stuff.
Always, we pull box customers have their comics bags and boarded. That's a big thing, but that you always have to provide some incentives. Customers do want to feel like if they're buying from you regularly and they're reserving, they're getting something out of that beyond just the promise that they'll get the comic. The market is tough. You have to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So Pele, I wanted to ask you, since you opened up your shop, you said you learned your initial mistake was your vision for what you wanted to do with the shop didn't actually fit your floor space, so you end up having to invest a ton of money in that. What other adjustments have you made to your business model that actually improved your bottom line since then?
I made a big adjustment as far as the way I positioned back issue comics in relation to new comics. At one time, new comics were about 65 to 70% of sales. That was back when my business partner was primarily involved, and he wasn't doing a lot of churn as far as his back issues and stuff. He kind of had them premium priced. He kind of relied on new issue sales to to make the bread, to make the money. But and I was like, well, I don't think that's, I was kind of seeing that new issues were getting soft, and I didn't like the way that editorial was moving as far as Marvel and DC at the time, and still don't, but it's getting a little better. But, I said, well, I'm going to position for back issues. And now, at one point it reached 85% of all of my sales of comic sales were back issues. And that wasn't the fact that the new comics had dropped off that much. It was that back issues of Bronze Age, Copper, Silver Age books were just selling that much better. And now it's around 70-30. And for me, I'm happy with that split. I like the 70-30, 75-25 split. I'm comfortable with that. If new comics fell off the face of the earth, it wouldn't hurt me that badly. I draw in a lot of collectors now that don't even buy, they don't even buy new comics. They're there to get the back issues. And the new comic, I'm always, hey, that this is tied directly to, we're talking about like the X-Men titles. Like, well, this was addressed earlier in this other series, and I've got my guys in the shop that are already trained for that. And they say, oh, you need to go and look at this run over here, at the floppies in this run. And they'll point them over to the back issue bins. And it's always referred, it's like saying, okay, the opportunity that you have is when they come in to look to get the new X titles, the new Spider-Man or something like that. That is an opportunity for you to then help them to find back issues to come to accompany their new comic purchases. I said, you're doing them a service by, giving them a better experience, opening them up to enjoy more comic books, and we get to make more money off that because, the back issues have really good margins on them. So.
But I'd guess, at least, shops, when they come up, the easiest thing to do if you're coming in new is most likely to steer toward the new comics. It's going to be faster than curating. But it's not just, I think you hit upon a little bit, it's not just curating the older comics. You have to have a whole mentality around where you're going to get them, how you're going to store them, how you're going solicit them to customers. You build that market. And I think if you invest the time and energy into doing that, I think you have a nice, stable business. I think it's insulated, insured a little bit from the rampant up and down from new comics, but it is work, I would argue.
It is an extreme.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I talked to Wes at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, my time. And you know what I'm doing? I'm cleaning and pressing comic books.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, and you know, some weeks it's 10 hours a day. I'm cleaning and pressing comic books. You know, and I'm getting them ready to send to CGC or just getting them ready, you know, to put out on sale. You know, I want them to be as presentable as they can be, you know, because I bought X collection that came in. They're a little dirty, they're a little wrinkly, you know, but I can punch that up, get them looking really nice, increase the condition of them, and that way we can get more money for them, and or get them ready for grading. And it's all in that, you know, it's turnaround. It's getting the collections in, or finding the stores that didn't make it, getting their inventory in, getting those turned around, getting them ready, getting them on the floor, ready for inventory. And it's a perpetual thing. You have to get into the mindset of I'm going to be investing this much time into this. And, you know, over time though, that will pay off. It's going to take a lot of work, but you're going to end up with an inventory that's going to be very impressive, and you're going to have customers that want to spend their money when they see what you have available. So, you know, it's either that or they buy on eBay, you know, and I'd rather have prices that are comparable, if not less than what they're going to have to pay on eBay for them. And they don't have to wait. So
Perch, did you do anything with it, you know, when you've had your comic shop? Is there any adjustment you made midstream that ended up being really lucrative, or that was just a smart, like in the moment, like spotting the market and adjusting?
Yeah, I think I made some changes to. Here's the best one example is Pullbox is extending that to digital. Unfortunately, I kind of gave this idea away. This is something I did when I was I had a partner, and we targeted. Well, let me use different language. We went down to the military base down south of Seattle, Tacoma. And there were a lot. We discovered there was a ton of soldiers there who needed something to do. Comics was going to be a big thing for them, so we're able to both sell and ship into that market and make it easy for them. Give them some pretty steep discounts for the soldiers who are remote and deployed, and also provide them a way to ship the comics back. So the idea was, we're going to ship you something. You can read it for a while. You put it back in the envelope. You ship it back. We'll put it in a little box for you. And when you return from your deployment, then you can come pick up your stack. You don't have to cart it around for you. So that whole mechanism was very successful. And that was something I'll replicate in the next shop as well. And I think it felt good on a silly way. It felt like a nice thing I was doing, but also that market was huge and incredibly reliable. So that was a nice one.
It's the one that's been deployed for 12 months. I can tell you that would have been a godsend.
Yeah. We do a similar thing once a month. We don't do like a per issue, but what we'll do is the soldier has the option every 1 to 2 months. We'll take all their books, and we'll box them up and we'll ship them to him. And we'll ship them to him, or we'll ship them to where he's going to be on leave, and then he can pick them up and read them when he's when he gets stateside, or we can ship him where he's posted.
Yeah.
And they love that. Oh God, they love that. And these are readers.
Yeah.
These aren't necessarily collectors. They're avid readers. And what's awesome about that is, one, you're giving them something to do, because as West well knows, it's really boring. Living on a base is boring, and you're always fighting for something to do. But and sometimes there's not a comic book. Sometimes there's not a comic book availability at the PX, so you're kind of wondering But
Well, it's not so bad, stateside, but when you go to
Oh, yeah.
Afghanistan, you're stuck on the, there's no leaving the fob for a year straight.
Absolutely. It's
The
crazy.
supplies are limited. If you could get your hands on some comic books and actually,
Oh yeah.
way of
What was so
storing
awesome?
them, because you have
They
no
get their
storage
comics.
there.
Absolutely.
It's that trick. It's the what we found. So we had a business of selling to soldiers and everything else, but it didn't take up. When we added the service of giving them a return envelope and just having that as part of the whole package, and they could just read, pass around, do whatever they wanted, and then send them back, and then we'd put them in a box for them and just wait. That was killer. That was the thing that just turned it all around. And
I guarantee it wasn't just the soldiers either. That was family members going, "Oh, my son's gonna love this. He's already over there. Let me hook him up with this."
Yeah.
And that would be perfect because you literally only have storage. Like your storage is the amount of space underneath your bed. Like you don't really get like a wall locker and stuff like that when you're in Afghanistan, or at least not where I was. We were kind of stuck on a mountain. Wasn't very fun.
No, we're just going on in the chat a little bit, kind of conversely, and we'll see how it plays out. One of the things we talk about diversification in the new shop, I will have coffee there because it's Seattle and you can't have enough. I'm always surprised that you can just keep adding coffee shops and they'll keep selling. There's no limit to it. Anyway, that was something I didn't anticipate, the level of permits and food safety board requirements and other things that went into that.
Oh yeah.
I should have partnered. That was a dumb decision. That's delayed things quite a bit. But the trick that I felt like I had to offer the full service, we're going to have comics, and we're going to have parents dropping kids off at some point to have drawing lessons, and they're going to want to have coffee, or there's a market there for that. But that was, at this current moment, I feel like that was a huge mistake. Hopefully 6 months from now, I'm like, nope, we got through it, and money is
the value added to the customers.
Yeah, I'm hoping, but it's all about we can draw. We want people coming into the store or traffic coming online or through orders or foot traffic, whatever it is. We want as many different sources of penetration as possible into that store for different reasons. If they come in, then it gives us an opportunity to capture that customer and sell them different things and do stack on purchasing and all the rest. There's a whole market there. If we can get them into the store and get them engaged with one of the products, then the experience can take over and we can do more. But it's trying to give as many doors in as possible. May have overextended myself. We'll find out. If the videos suddenly drop off and I'm just silent for 3 months, you'll know I'm underwater.
All right, Perch. So the next question is, if you could go back in time and tell young Perch one thing today before you opened up your comic business, what would it have been?
Start with more money, probably. I think, or just, I think it's a tough question because you learn a lot along the way, and it's not like there's one key lesson at the beginning that you should have known. It's an evolving process. I think the biggest thing that I knew going in, but maybe didn't realize how much it was going to factor in was be prepared to move, be prepared to shift, be prepared to take your idea and put it on the shelf and do a new one. And you have to be very, very fluid with what's working and never assume that, it's 1994 and life is pretty good in comics and maybe 1996 won't be that good. So, it's stuff like that. And whatever, you do, don't order hard on Rob Liefeld books. That is a bad in the 90s. He sells better now, but it's interesting to see him on Twitter kind of pounding his chest and being very salty with people. It's like, dude, the amount of shops that have, Brigade and Youngblood, and just the amount of shops that overordered on your stuff back in the day. I'm sorry. We should be a little bit more humble.
So you think it's important for a shop owner not to get married to the idea that this is how I'm going to promote or this is how I'm going to sell? You have to be able to respond and identify the market trends that your customers are basically giving you, right?
Customer is king. You have to be aware of what they're thinking and what they're coming in for, and they're not going to be the same. Nothing lasts forever, and it's why a lot of the videos, a lot of the conversation, a lot of what people say online and Twitter, they're very much focused in what's happening right now, and the fact that right now is going to be forever. Whether it's in the shop, whether it's a particular comic writer that's famous, whether it's crowdfunding, any of those different topics, they're going to rise and they're going to fall. It does not stay the same. And it gives you some perspective too, where if you see an artist or writer who's being nuts on social media, well, they're popular now. Let's check back in 5 years. Probably they won't be. Things change fast. And as a store owner, you have to be prepared to change fast and not get stuck in, it's my way, it's this way. That's the death of shops. If you've seen these shops with these older owners, and they're going to drive it right into the ground because they're going to run it like it was back in the mid 90s, and that's just what they're going to do, and they're unhappy, and eventually they go out of business.
So, Pele, one final question for you before we move on to the next topic. I think your son might have pranked you a few months back by saying that you had an artist or a writer come.
My manager did that. My manager.
Oh, was your manager?
Because I don't pay attention to a lot of that stuff sometimes.
But do you think it's a value add? Is it worth the money and the time to go out there and acquire that talent and bring them in for special signings, special appearances to help promote your shop and maybe bring in that crowd that wants an autograph, or maybe put some sales and some incentives on their products while they're there?
It depends on the fee. Some of them, some guys are like, whatever I sell, that's fine. Other people are like saying, okay, it's going to be $2,500 and there's going to be a certain signing fee and there's going to be blah, 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 blah. And, and I'll just say, well, I appreciate your time. It's a situation where I'll compensate someone if it's going to be in the shop's interest. And I'm, at least going to be able to make, a reasonable amount on it and provide the benefit for the customer. If I'm going to break even, but a lot of customers are going to be happy, I'm going to do it. That's fine. But I don't want to get an artist. I don't want to get an artist or a writer in there and, there's going to be a $25 signature fee. What? No. I think $10 for a signature, or $10 for several signatures on a few, like a few books they bring in, I'll have a limit. No, you cannot bring your entire Rob Liefeld collection in and have him sit there and sign, 100 books, just so, you can flip them on eBay next week. No. But yeah, if there's a reasonable middle ground there, and it provides a benefit to the customer and then potentially possibly draw new customers in. That's another, that's the reason why, of course, any shop owner would do that, is just so, their customers can not only increase the value of their collection, but to meet the people that, of course, that make the products that they love. So, that's a value there that you probably can't quantify in dollars at that time, but will pay dividends in the future. So it's a funny situation there, because I've had some guys come in that I expected it was going to be a lot better than it did turn out, and I've had other guys that or girls that it's like, wow, what an experience. They were drawing sketches on the books and stuff like that, and it was just fantastic, but and usually the smaller artists that are a little bit more humble, or the smaller writers, they're the ones that are really going to go that extra mile, and they're going to try to make that experience better for everybody involved. And
nice.
It's like we had Dave Sim. That's my favorite person I've ever had in the shop, was Dave. He was drawing Cerebus sketches on everything, and he's like laughing and joking with everybody. And, he's like throwing, he's like throwing little candies and stuff like that at people and all that kind of stuff. And, it was like one of those days that I could not get anybody to leave the shop because, they were having so much fun with him. And, and we were going to do fees on books, and he's like, oh, screw it, just screw it, don't worry about it. And, but he left, he did well. He did really well that day. And, we did really well on that day. I don't think there were very many Cerebus comics left when he left, when he was gone. But
all right.
Anyway,
Yeah, it's dark. So let's
Sorry,
move
I'm
on to
rambling.
something. No, it's fine. Let's move on to something a little bit more controversial. I think people want to hear about this. I know I'm dying to hear about it. Let's move to Diamond Comics Distributors. Pele, I want to start with you. And I think I know the answer to this, but we got to start somewhere. Are Diamond Distributors a helpful partner or hindrance in today's market?
Oh, Diamond. I think that if there was another distributor, they would probably be fine. But they take advantage of the comic. They take advantage of comic shop owners. They use leverage to manipulate the comic shops. They are supposed to work as middlemen between us and the publishers, and more often than not, they just bend us over so the publisher can dig a little deeper into us. I see them as some of the worst predators in the retail space in any market that I've ever seen. And no amount of goodwill that they've tried to foster over the years, I think at this point is enough to make up for the damage that they have done to shop owners and comic shops since their exclusivity deal was in place. And I think that they're one of the primary reasons that shops fail, aside from financial issues and things like that. And usually they're at the core of some of those financial issues. And they probably cause as many shops to fail as just having, money shortfalls.
Mhm.
We were talking earlier about the comic book issue damages. I have some weeks where 40-50% of my comics are damaged, and it's not just a situation where one box got stacked wrong or something like that. And it's a situation where 3 out of 4 boxes were stacked wrong, and you deal with people, you're paying $4 to $5, $6 a book. You're expecting it to not have dings and color breaking creases and all that. And, unfortunately, the way they're packed sometimes, that's how they arrive.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't sell that. I can't sell it for full value, and call them up, say, hey, you got damage, okay, well, we'll get that out for the next shipment. No, you're not. I'm going to have those here tomorrow. Well, no, it's yes, I'm going to have them in tomorrow, or I'm going to be calling somebody else, and I'll go through another tier of distributors, and you all can kiss my ass. And I was hot, and dude's like, okay, fine, I'll get a hot, that out there to you. I'll get it on a hot shipment. And it's just, my tolerance for what they do is so small right now that if there was an alternative to them that was even close, I would leave them in a New York minute.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a reality right now.
So if you're
was that a little too?
No. That was perfect. I just want to say, if you're watching the video right now and you haven't given us a thumbs up, please like the video and show your support for the channel. We're having a great conversation going on right now. And if you would like to support the channel, super chats are available, and we also have a coffee page, and the link is in the video description. Perch, do you echo Pele's sentiments regarding Diamond?
Yeah, I mean, Diamond's a terrible company at this point. But you gotta figure. I mean, the owner is old and doesn't seem to care at all. The son kind of has some ideas of what to do, but that the business isn't moving anywhere. And so you occasionally, I mean, you've got a Portland group and you've got people who are smart in that business, but they don't have really any incentive to change. Their tech department is minuscule. Very nice. I mean, you talk to some of the people there who do some of the digital work, and they're smart, good people, but there's not nearly enough of them. They're not incentivized to do anything. In many cases, they're blocked from doing things. So the whole company is frozen in amber from the 90s, from when they took over. I don't think they're really prepared to own the market like they have. They just weren't. And nothing has really changed since then. So it's propped up by the fact that there's only one. And it shouldn't, by all rights, shouldn't be alive. It's some stores will get compensation or drop ships from damage issues, but most of the time, if an issue arrives damaged, you're just screwed. You're not going to get anything new. Yeah. You can complain, but you're getting nothing. So it's just, and the reps are they're very fluid. If you are not one of 8 shops in the country, you're going to get a random rotating rep at different times. It could be good or it could be terrible. They'll do secret shopping kind of activities sometimes that are really shady, and it often feels like they do want to bribe. But it's just it's silliness, and I guess I have to go back to I've been very mad at them, and I usually get mad about every Tuesday night because it's the lottery. You open boxes up, and it's like, well, what are you gonna miss today? And you're playing like, oh, there's no Batman in here. Did DC not ship it, or did I not get it, or what's going on? You're on Facebook trying to say, hey, did you guys get it, or what's going on? You're hunting down your comics. It's nonsense, and that is the company, and it's old. The owner is old, and the practice is old, and the people there are old, and that's probably of the top 3 reasons why I don't identify myself on streams like this, is because hey, I'm they take revenge on people. I mean, they do. They will. You can't speak freely. They will come after you. So and that's, by the way, that's not uncommon from a lot of distributors who corner the market. This is a common story in lots of different businesses. It's just it is absolutely the reason why comics isn't growing as much as it could, with all of the pop culture attention, all the marketing, all the things that are going on. They've got this one piece crammed in the middle that is blocking, is not scaling, and it's stagnating the business because they're just there and they're inflexible. And I mean, I've never met somebody who wasn't from Mile High or Midtown or a place like that has good things to say. Even the other giant shops will credit them for their own destruction. It's escaping right now. The huge store down in LA that was a shock when it closed down in on Sunset. Anyway.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. They credit, I mean, they're like, Diamond was the person who shot us in the back. That was the reason going out. Now, it was also a lot of debt that store taken on, but Diamond is a big reason for that. So nothing good to say. And I hope they get replaced. And I do think, by the way, and lots of people will complain, and there will be tons of videos about how Disney is evil and terrible and screw Disney and all the rest. SJWs are running everything. But Disney will take their publishing arm and start doing an end around. They absolutely will in the next 12 months, guaranteed. And while lots of people will complain about that, it's going to be a good thing in the long run, because it's going to break this blockade. So Pele, you said it right at the beginning. If there was a second distributor, it would be different.
Yeah.
So
Competition increases quality.
I need to thank Skip and Tosh for the $2 super chat. Mile High Comics Guy defends him in court, and he's got a little face palm. We got some scales of justice going on.
Yeah, chuckles.
Yeah. Thanks, Skip.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Skip, for supporting the channel. If you would like to support the channel, super chats are open.
Here's the shop you were thinking of is Meltdown Comics.
Yeah. Yes, it's Meltdown. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
I was going. Sorry. They hurt businesses. But if there was a second, if they had to compete, it would get better. The Sun would take more control, and things would get better in that company. But right now,
Black Cat Comics. Black Cat Comics was another one that in San Francisco that was like a staple for Northern California. They were awesome. I've been there personally like 4 or 5 times. And always when I was in that San Francisco area, like on traveling, just personal, I always went to Black Cat Comics because they were just amazing. And one of the reasons they went under was because of Diamond. They listed, they said it wasn't cash flow problems. It was product flow problems.
Yeah,
and
you can't run a business where the product is so inconsistent, and a lot of stores do live month to month. They do, like the earlier problem, they don't have enough cash in hand. They don't have enough bank to survive the gap, and you get a week where the big comic. Imagine a small comic store that's struggling, that's living off of new comic sales, and it's like, well, we screwed up your House of X #6 order. You didn't get any this week. We'll try and get them to you someday. You're done. You could be done in a week, and that's unfortunately the reality of that company. But I do think I'll be the one lone guy as Disney starts to do in runs with their publishing department. I'm going to be cheering that move.
No, I agree with you. It's something that's another comic owner and I were talking about. One that's in Memphis. It's a good buddy of mine, and he's saying that. He's saying Disney's publishing arm, he goes, one of 2 things will happen. One, Disney will take over part of the publishing or will take away some of the distribution away from Diamond and go direct. Or he said they'll do something really stupid and they'll move some of the Disney distribution to Diamond and overburden them even more.
No way.
And but he said it's going to come down to dollars and cents and who's going to be able to do it cheaper. And I was like, oh God, if it went the other way around, it would just be worse.
Well, the problem you're going to run into if Disney does that is there's a risk of it turning into Heroes World 2.0.
Yeah.
And there is a chance it will happen for sure. I think the difference there is that the Disney publishing arm just has much more distribution. And this is a topic that's kind of a fierce argument I've had with other retailers. And this is a Facebook thing where I'd say 75% of the people are against, 25% are for. I'm for more of the Walmart distributions, more of the Targets, more of the, get into Barnes & Noble. More out there is better. It's better for shops. And that sounds counterintuitive, like, hey, but you're going to open up the market so other people can sell your comics? Yeah.
They're not going to put every comic in those places. That's the thing, and that's what a lot of retailers don't understand.
Right? They're not going to put the full stock there. They're not going to put a heavy stock there. So if somebody's going into a Barnes and Noble or a Walmart and they're buying House of X #6, great. They're going to eventually find their way back to a comic shop because they're going to want the other comics around it. There is no staff at Walmart who's going to say, "Oh, let me go into the back and find the other issues for you." That doesn't exist. So it routes people back to comic shops. And the problem that retailers have right now is that there's no awareness of this market outside of the shops, and the shops are too small to do that promotion themselves. So I welcome it. And the benefit to if Disney publishing really gets going is those comics and that content will get in bigger places. And I think that will be a benefit.
So, Perch, we've heard a lot of weird, horror stories from Pele regarding Diamond. I don't know if I'll call them spies, where they come into your shop and they take notes and they send back a report on whether or not you're like compliant, so you could meet certain tiers. Have you experienced that as well?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's confusing in terms of what you get and where you need to step up to. And it's clear that Diamond and to some extent the publishers, I mean, I'm more hard on Diamond than the publishers from the standpoint of, I think, Marvel and DC and others, they do shady things and they're frustrating in their incentive programs. We talked about it earlier, but that is all pretty normal for a company trying to take territory and win a business. I understand where they're coming from, even if I don't like all those practices. Diamond then putting an extra layer of strangeness on top of what you have to order, what you have to do, what comes in and where, is the stuff that it is a horror story. It is absolutely, because you're taking a complex situation and then you're twisting the rules around to something that makes no sense, where there's also no money.
I was telling Robert was one of the comic book aficionados was saying it. I was telling him one of the situations was that I got dinged because you have to have a television in the shop, and on that television you have to be playing something that's comic book related, something that's a theme, with comic books or nerddom, something like that. It's got to be something. And I got dinged on my evaluation because we were watching. Someone had, I think it was, I don't know what it was. It was not a comic book show or something like that was on the television at the time. And we actually got we didn't get balled out or anything like that, but it definitely showed up on the report, and they were like, oh, well, you need to make sure that it's this particular type of programming, blah blah blah, like that. And one of the other aficionados was going, no way, my buddy owns a shop and he said that never happens to him and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's different. It's not going to be the same for every single shop. That's what you have to understand. They're going to do it differently. Some regions are going to be different than others. But have you encountered anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a lot back in the more recent past, where we were trying to align with other shops. We were trying to get some mass, and Diamond didn't like that. So we got spanked on that. But I mean, it's just goofy. I mean, the way these things work is there's no guidebook. There's no thing to kind of pull out and say, here's what you can expect if you're small. Here's what you can expect if you order more. Here's what different incentive programs. You just don't have anything like that. And I think that's the problem. You don't know what you're to expect at any given moment. And a rep can change on you, and suddenly you have a new set of rules to deal with. Or there's, there's I know we were shipping this way, but how about if we ship it to you a different way, where you're going to get it on a different day? Or I got a conversation like, what I'd like to have happen is, maybe we'll ship them to you on Wednesday, and this will save you some money, because there was never any indication of what would save money. I'm like, no, that's the day new comics come out. No, I can't have it come in on Wednesday. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And it's like, well,
on the shelf.
Yeah. But you get just things, and it often and then the rep disappears 2 months later, and you're like, okay, and that guy's gone, and it's just random. I think, yes, so Pele, I agree, but it's more than anything, it's just random all the time. Yeah. It feels
There's
like
no consistency.
Yeah, it's an old business that has no idea of how to evolve.
Yeah.
So you guys would say that at the core of the problem with Diamond Comics distribution is that it's outdated. It's an outdated model that's had no revamps or renovations to the process in 25 years.
Yeah, and different arms of Diamond don't know what other arms are doing. And you've got the marketing and the previews department and all that kind of stuff. Those guys, I've seldom ever had problems with them. They're nice guys. They don't have a lot of money for promotion, stuff like that. I don't ask them for money for promotion. They're supposed to provide it to me.
Sure.
They're supposed to provide it to me, but I'm like, I'll let it slide as long as you get me the materials I need. And so we have a good relationship as far as that's concerned. Yeah. I don't have to bitch and moan at them very much. And, and I don't ask them for the money that they're supposed to give me anyway. So, that's okay.
There are very nice people there. I just, to echo that, bro, there are definitely some nice people. I don't want to present like the entire company is rotten full of opportunity. There's some wonderful people at Diamond. It's just
it's the distribution people. It's the managers and the shipping department people that make Diamond rotten.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is the core of the business, is the actual getting the product to the stores. And that part of it is rotten. When you're shipping a big box that has 100 comics in it, and you're sticking statues in that box too, that's a failure.
That's some Amazon shit.
You know, and the box ends up on its side. You know, the UPS guy, boom, he drops it.
Yeah, that's a problem too as well. We got to cite there that yes, Diamond is awful, but sometimes you get a box and it's like, hey, the bottom half is wet. That's probably a bad sign for what's to come, and that's UPS. But
yeah, and I was like, you know, you could fix this by just putting a plastic liner inside the box and put the comics in the plastic liner.
Yeah, good luck.
You know, we wouldn't get any more wet comics. Duh. But and I'm like, you know, I'll pay the extra 10 cents for the bag. You just put it on my shipping bill. That's fine. If it's a better insurance that I'm not going to end up with wet comics on a rainy day. But even worse than that though is they have you get your comics in, I'll get like 8 to 10 boxes. All right. And I get all my boxes in for that week, and lo and behold, there is what I like to call the odds and ends box, which has all the miscellaneous crap. And that's where they'll put my incentives. That's where they'll stick the incentive comics, which are the money, the big money, the 1 in 25s, 1 in 100s, 1 in 250s, whatever, in that box with mugs, statue busts, pens and pencil sets, and any other little thing that can rattle around or fly around in the box if it turns loose. And usually all that crap is sitting on top of those comics when I open the box. And these are the books that I'm going to try to sell for a premium, and without bags and boards. Of course, they're not bagged and boarded. Mm-hmm. But, you know, thanks a lot, Diamond. I appreciate it. That book that I was going to try to get 20, you know, that 1 in 25 I was going to try to get $25 for. I'll be lucky if I can get a 10 spot for it now. Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know,
I've been down to visit, and I had the kind of misfortune of visiting. There's a film studio that's somewhat near where they are called Leica. And if you're familiar with them, they do
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're a high-end animation studio. They're the not Pixar, but just incredible high-end tech. Just you walk in there like, holy crap! Look at this technology that they're using. Amazing stuff.
Cool, is great.
Yeah, I can't actually promote them highly enough. They're a really smart studio, good people. Then you go a few miles away, and you're now visiting Diamond. And if you've ever seen the movie Joe versus a Volcano, it's an old movie. Think about the opening scene where these miserable office workers are going into a factory, and the light overhead is flickering. And I swear, we went in to visit some of the reps, and it was like furniture out of the early 70s, and just a soul-crushing place to work. And then a factory where it's like it is the room in the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark where they're putting the Ark of the Covenant in this just giant stupid warehouse was far more modern looking than what we walked into. And you're seeing this, and it's Portland, so it's kind of damp, crap weather, and it's like this is just awful on every level. I can't express enough how totally miserable this office looked. And so if I worked there, I mean, God, I would be a miserable person too. So anyway,
yeah. Though I was there once, and it looked like an old set for Mad Men, but all the office stuff and everything was allowed to just fall into disrepair. And what was funny was the chick was there. She was like, my printer's messed up again. And she was like on her last,
wit's end.
Yeah, she was at her wit's end. My printer's messed up. I've got to get this out. I don't know what I'm going to do. And she was almost in tears. And I said, calm down. And I, just said, okay, let's, I said, do you have another printer? She goes, it's over in the other office. I said, fine. So I disconnected her printer, stuck it to the side, went over and got the other printer from the other office, stuck it over there with her, hooked up the Ethernet, everything like that, got everything set up. And she goes, but I don't have set to print to that. I said, that's fine. I got her printer. I got to change her printer over. I got, everything set up and running, and she was able to print again. And just the look of sheer joy on her face
you know, and she's like, oh, that's wonderful. I said, well, that's what I used to do. You know, I'm a retired network guy. You know, I used to do this kind of crap. And she goes, we don't have anybody like that.
This is a company that was trying to put out a program to allow customers to pre-order comics to drop ship to their local store.
Right.
Good. Sure. That was going to work out well.
Pushing. I mean, they're still trying to do that, but their web team is. I mean, God, it's not enough people. I mean, it's smaller than startups. And I know some of the people there. They're nice people. I felt bad because about a year ago, I was on Twitter and I was just angry. And I go to Diamond and they've got this picture of like, we love comic shops, and the shop that is pictured there was Xanadu in downtown Seattle, which had been closed for about 4 years. And I don't know if you remember this, Doc, but I'm like, dumbasses. And I just started kind of ranting on Twitter a little bit about this. And so this Diamond tech person comes in and it's like, oh man, I'm sorry, we screwed up, but we'll get it fixed. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. And I DM'd him for a while and he's like, look, there's two of us. What do you want here? And it's you know, it's just silly. It's silly what in this business, again, I'll keep reiterating, it's a $1 billion film that's coming out from Avengers. It's omnipresent that Marvel and DC characters and Batman Day and all the rest is out all the time. And then the tech department, the people are going to kind of take us into the next generation with digital and pull box and dropship and all the rest, is like, you can count them on one hand, not using the thumb. I mean, it's that doesn't work. It's stupid.
Dang, I'll tell you what, Perch, you are on today. That is the perfect segue to our next subject. All right, Perch. Can you describe how Marvel Comics communicate with comic retailers and how they solicit feedback?
I mean,
oh, that's a good one.
No, I mean, not really. I mean, yeah, they the answer is not.
Do you know who your Marvel rep is? Because I don't know who my Marvel rep is.
No, I mean, you talk to various people, but you don't really have a rep in the traditional sense. You just have kind of this. It's like you have a call center line for your Epson printer that isn't printing right. You find somebody maybe. You know, Marvel will say at various times that they do a lot to market. Well, here I'll say it this way: there's been a common complaint. And there's been multiple videos about this. I know Zach has done some, and I think Ethan's done some. Those bigger names have done videos about this, where you have a comic creator who goes on Twitter and complains about having to market for their own books. And I think Mags has done this, and others have done this. And people pile on the creator of you know, hey, you're making the book, and you should shut up and promote your book. And I don't disagree with that. I think if you're smart and you're trying to build your career, of course you should promote yourself. But they have a point to extent of the company they work for has a marketing department and has a rep and has this whole outreach department who do nothing. And there's no consistency. There's no clear outreach. So I can sympathize a little bit when creators are saying, why am I having to market that it's free cutoff day or a final cutoff day for this book, when there's a whole mechanism of people who are paid specifically to do that job and don't. They have a point. They're
usually the understaffed positions that do that.
Yeah,
that's what I keep hearing from them is like, yeah, we've got people that do that, but you know, they're already working 70 hours of a 60-hour work week,
which I think is absolute bullshit. I'm sorry. I don't know the language filters on this.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think, try to avoid the F bomb, but that's
there you go. I'll just. Yeah, they have staff, they have money. I think it's inexcusable that Diamond's understaffed, but having visited some of these offices, having seen some of these departments, having just gone to LinkedIn and scrolled through the amount of people who claim to be part of the marketing department, I'm not talking the comic editors, and there I would argue they definitely have the editors doing more than they are capable of doing, kind of in every sense of the word, but. But the marketing department, there's a good, healthy group there, and they have access to their parent companies and other resources. And if there's one place where Disney and Time Warner, now AT&T, will spend, is if you come to them and like, we need more help to promote, market, ignite the channel and feed it, the money will come. And there are people, they just don't do the job. I've never seen a group of people who take more advantage of the 980 philosophy or the 4-hour lunch break or whatever it happens to be.
Oh yeah.
But you cannot get information from them. And I go back, you're told, check out the previews catalog. You look, the solicits are absolute uninspired garbage. I swear Marvel is having some guy at a bar, kind of randomly throw darts at a board and then write up those solicitations. They rarely have anything to do with the comics. But
they'll do a full page solicitation for a book that damn well is only going to sell 7,500, 8,000 copies.
So exactly. Well, it's inaccurate. They'll put the wrong creators on the book. They'll say, this is going to have something in it. You'll love it. And then you get the book and it's like a fill-in one-off issue. It has nothing to do with solicitation. And at one point I was taking the Marvel solicitations and just reaming them on Twitter kind of one by one. And I got Matt Rosenberg and Tom Brevoort to come in and just, be super pissed. And it became clear that Rosenberg was writing several of the solicits through that conversation. It's like, the jokey, hey, you're going to want to see what Gwenpool does this month. It's like, tell me what Gwenpool's doing this month and maybe make a better Gwenpool comic, but just stop with this crap. So anyway, I went too far here, but it's just.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
So,
well, I mean,
my big issue as far as that's concerned is the lying is really bad, but it's the inconsistent attention put on special series over regular series that you don't know anything at all that's going on with the regular series, the ongoing series. But by God, they're going to give you 50 pages of every single specialty thing possible going on, mini series that they're going to have or maxi series they're going to have. And they're going to they're going to pitch that to the moon, or they're going to pitch their pet project from one of their purse puppies, just to try to get it up to 10,000 copies they could sell. And they're going to ignore the big books that need more solicitation so that people know what's going on. And if there's going to be a new artist, there's going to be a changeover in writers, there's going to be any of those things. They ignore that. Or it's hard to find any information about that because they're too busy talking about War of the Realms or whatever the hell else, filler, forgettable series that's coming out. It's just.
Well, I think this comes back to an obvious failure of their digital team. And what's his name with the stupid mustache? Ryan Penagos.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about the Legion of Doofuses.
Well, he's another one of the Legion of Doofuses. He's a vice president. Yeah. He's the vice president of marketing and something wasting people's money, apparently, because
you can obviously tell who the people are that the people that are in promotions, who they're buddies with, who's been in contact with them to get their stuff pitched. And you can tell because right off the bat, it's like, no, Squirrel Girl is not selling well. A one-page ad for Squirrel Girl, isn't going to help Squirrel Girl sell more copies. I'm sorry.
I think the one-page ad for Squirrel, I don't care if you want to waste that printing ink on Squirrel Girl, go for it, or whatever it happens to be. Just for the actual comics you're selling, get the effing writer and the artist correct so that when you're ordering these things, we know what the hell we're selling. Or make a solicitation that says, this issue will have Spider-Man in it, not, hey, there may be a special thing going. You're trying to sell to the retailer. Stop being cute and just give us something we can do. Diamond is out of date and they're frustrating. Marvel and DC have plenty of cash in this department. The one thing I will not accept and have never accepted from those publishers is that they're cash starved in their marketing and their digital departments. They've got tons of cash. You go to the San Diego Comic-Con, you meet some of their digital team. They're walking around like rock stars. There's a lot of them. There's dozens in some cases people who are geared toward this market, and then they vomit out a year later some podcast with Wolverine. That's great, but it took you how many people to do this and how much money for that? You got to be kidding me.
Well, they have an entire digital marketing team that spends 80% of its time on food, sports, nonsense, and a bunch of crap that has nothing related to comics.
So that's an even different team. So the social media outreach team, the social media digital team that is creating this content is mainly staffed with interns and other people, and they've got money. And so that's a whole almost different topic. And yes, I agree that's kind of nonsensical crap, but that's why it seems so disconnected. It's a whole different group. But I'm talking, you've got multiple VPs who carry big, 240 plus a year salaries, plus bonuses, plus incentives, that their entire job is to push the comic into new markets, new market generation, digital, and all the rest. And they're not asleep at the wheel. They're just randomly driving it into crowds of people for no reason.
Yeah.
I think that about covers it. Yeah.
There we go.
That's it.
So I'm going to say that the communication between Marvel Comics and their retail partners is poor.
It would be poor if it existed.
All right,
I'll take
Pele,
that
this one's for you. What's DC's reputation among retailers? Do you see them as a good business partner?
I like a lot of things that DC does. I think that they I like the DC previews books. I like those a lot better. I think that they're not quite as show over substance as the Marvel's preview materials. I think that their promotions are weaker, mostly because I don't think that they have quite the outreach in the industry as Marvel does. Because Marvel has connections, now, especially now with Disney, being a part of Disney, they have connections all the way up. Whereas DC is kind of like, they've got some heavy hitters, and they're still very important as far as in the cultural zeitgeist, but it's still not to the level that Marvel is. But they do well with what they have, and I think that I think if you ask most comic shop owners and managers, they're going to tell you that the connective tissue between them and DC is better than it is between them and Marvel. Mostly because Marvel doesn't really even try to make much contact with us, unless it's through an intermediary or just through the materials that they provide to anybody else. Whereas DC will kind of reach out to us. Now, whether that information is accurate is a completely different matter. And, like the whole thing with, again, I will never let it rest. The Batman 50, situation. And then they get King, that guy, I swear to God, when he, anyway, I'm not going to get off on that. I won't say it, but, but yeah, I mean, they were heading in the right direction. Everything looked like it was getting better. Sales were up. And then all of a sudden, bam, everything went to hell. And it was almost like a span of like 3 or 4 months there that, so this isn't right. Something's wrong. Oh my God, they just dropped all these titles, and customers were going, what the hell's going on? What happened? My title got dropped. What's going on? It's like, I don't know. We've not been contacted. Now that the title is just over, and it's just stunning. It's absolutely, it blew my mind that they just pulled something like that. And now we're finding out about the 5G. I mean, and I know it's not as bad as what it sounded like to begin with. It sounded like that, we're just going to dump all the old heroes and we're going to reboot this completely with new heroes. But no, it's not what it's going to be. Hopefully not. They've kind of tried to reassure people that that's not what's going to happen. But I think that's only because of the negative feedback they got. And I mean, I would say that it was really good, but then they pulled that, and the things that have happened recently has really soured me with regards to DC. And I don't know what the hell Black Label is supposed to be. Still don't know. It's supposed to have been an adult more adult centric, division of DC, more adult centric label. But it seems like they just put anybody on there that that they just want to promote their material. It doesn't make any sense. So
it doesn't make any sense to them either.
Yeah,
No.
Perch, do you understand what DC Black Label is now? Because I don't get it from the initial promotion or the promises of what it was going to be and what it is now. It just feels like a watered down mess filled with a bunch of crap.
Yeah, keep in mind that when Black Label was first announced, they had several different lines they were going to run, and then those got consolidated. And so everything that vaguely fit into Black Label or, not DC got shoved into Black Label. So Black Label is now Vertigo, but with the mainstream characters being handled for all intents and purposes. They've abandoned the size is not always going to be the different format. So there's kind of a random thing there. And I think this will continue for, a period of time. And then I think Black Label will more or less go away and you'll just have DC and DC Prestige. I heard that last week that, there's going to be another shift probably around the crisis and then the summer crisis in the 5G world. So, I think unfortunately it was an idea that got killed when they consolidated things, and now it's just a mess.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what they're doing with Bendis now is what Marvel Now was. And
sure, yep.
I'm sorry, but did DC happen to notice what happened with Marvel Now? And how long it took them to recover after that job?
That's the problem. Yeah.
It's the same people.
But they see that it had a lot of numbers.
Exactly.
And it was, but most of them were artificially inflated by variant schemes and everything else, because that was during the variant heyday. And they're looking at numbers from back then, and it was a little bit of a bump temporarily.
Absolutely.
I've heard that Michael Bendis is a hell of a talker when he's pitching something.
He's great at the pitch. He absolutely is an amazing pitch artist.
And that he really went in there and he bowled them over with promises and what he could do with his team. And I've just got to say that, if they were that easily swayed, despite the issues that are readily apparent, then I am very worried about DC going forward, because it almost reeks of a sign of desperation.
Well, and to some extent they are desperate in that they've been, they did the New 52 and that did well for them for a couple of years in terms of outselling Marvel, and then that slid, and they do want to figure out ways to get to be number one. And Doc hit the nail on the head. The Marvel Now and those books, despite all of the criticism we have for it today, and that it did well, and it's pretty common that a company will say, well, let's take some of those same techniques, but we'll have a different ending, like a football game. We're going to run the first half just like Marvel Now, and we're going to have a different second half because we have the gift of hindsight. We know that we can avoid it going wrong. And, you can make a strong case that, hey, the reason it went wrong is because there was, we didn't go hard enough into some of these techniques that were going on with Marvel Now. We cut short. We allowed the Marvel Cinematic Universe to derail what we were doing with Avengers and give that more publicity when we should have given it to Ms. Marvel or whatever it happens to be. I mean, you can make a numbers analysis that would support that claim. And so DC is definitely looking at that and going, hey, we love the era of Marvel Now for us. If we could have that, we would be, 20% higher than we are today in terms of our books. And that would look good to our parents. So let's get the creator who was the architect and mastermind behind a lot of that over here. That looks like a good acquisition. And it, I mean, again, if you're sitting there as a business person, you're just looking at the numbers, that makes sense. We're also on our end as critics or as fans or as retailers, whatever it happens to be, we're looking at it going, hey, there were some problems with that era. We saw it have a negative effect and it didn't work out like you'd hope. So who's right? We'll find out. I mean, and I think in fairness should be ready to accept the fact that, hey, maybe they'll do the Marvel Now 2.0 over at DC. They'll put it into 5G. It will be wildly successful because they'll get the marketing and these other things right. They'll pull in a bunch of new readers and life will be amazing. And if they do, I will be humble and say, great, because I'll be making money off of it. So wonderful.
They had it in their hands the entire time. I mean, if they had followed the Rebirth Doomsday Clock timetable and done according to
Jeff.
Yeah, according to Jeff, sorry, I got my nose itched for a second. If Jeff Johns, if they'd let Jeff Johns, steer the helm on this, they would be in a position right now that'd be very enviable.
So I agree.
Didio, I swear to God, I don't know what he's thinking half the time.
Well, I had this not argument, but I had this discussion with the DC writer and the editor for the book, and I think the basic thought process is, look, Rebirth was successful with existing comic fans, and that's great, but it wasn't growing our market share. The comic fans were happy, but it wasn't bringing in new people. And so even though a lot of the existing comic fans would have preferred we stay in that lane and keep moving, we have to do something to bring in the extra 40%. And we have to chase that market. Otherwise, we're going to continue to deal with.
I just don't think that market exists.
So
not in the physical retail space. I don't think it exists.
I think it does exist. I just don't think I think that people are looking at it wrong. I think you look at what Raina Telgemeier and some of these people are able to do, Dab Pilkey, where they're able to get comics to kids and ignite this stuff. I mean, Rainbow Rowell is able to get a pretty good market for her work outside of Marvel that is hungry and consumes it and has book signings, and that market exists.
In Portland, Los Angeles.
No, I disagree. So her books sell very well nationwide. Her comics do not. The fact that I'm not talking about her books. I'm talking about the comics. But that's the problem, is that there is this market there who is interested in this content that is not flipping over. And why? Is it because it's the fans' fault? Is it because it's not the reader's fault? The readers would happily flip over. It's that the content, when it gets translated and put into comic form, is again, it's missing the mark completely.
Well, it's because it's a 30-page. It's a 30-page book for $4 to $5, where they pay $4 for a 250-page, 300-page book.
It is.
You're talking about a limited amount of resources for a young audience that doesn't have that type of money, proportionately the story amount to what how much they get for how much money it is. The value there doesn't line up for a lot of people.
Price point and size is definitely a factor, but I'll tell you, parents, when they have kids and they're just trying to shut them up or give them something to entertain them for a while, they'll pay $5 a pop and not think about it. They do it with their coffee all the time. So price point is an issue. I'm not disagreeing, but it's not that the price is not the number one factor. It's the content, and it's I know I'm going to get laughed at, but I went and I read Rainbow Rowell's books. And not all of them, but I read one, and I looked at the comic, and I'm like, what is the difference here? I'm just trying to figure it out. Why is this selling? You go into stores, you've got a nationwide bestseller here in one hand, and then you have a comic that won't move at all with the other hand. What's missing? Why isn't this connecting from point A to point B? And it's definitely a combination of very poor marketing. You're not reaching that audience because you're not trying to attract them. And it's the content inside of the book is a huge step down from what's being done from book to comic. And so if you want to get that market is out there, but then you have to actually attack it like a competent person and not
the right vehicle.
Exactly. So
like I don't know if you remember the Harry Potter comics. Do you remember those, Perch?
I don't remember those comics.
That's because they never made them.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake. That was a huge mistake. And
you have. I mean, that's because. Well, I mean, there's a long story about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of rights issues and stuff like that was involved.
Rowling was never going to go for it, but It's there. You can. I guess the thing is, I always hear this. It's like, hey, the market doesn't exist. The market absolutely exists. You're just not hitting it. It's like if you have some people who are really into cars, and then you're trying to sell them a bicycle. They're not going to buy the bicycle just because you say, hey, it's sort of like a car. It has wheels. You have to make it fit that market. And this is the problem. DC could absolutely dominate with this new market they want to hit if they produce content that actually fit it. And that does not mean you take some weird, millennial writer and you try and say, hey, kids, I know what you like. It does not work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're dumbing it down to fit the lowest common denominator, and that's not hitting it.
Well, there's always still been the issue of medium, and kids, some kids, the medium of comics, of visual storytelling method, appeals to them. Other kids, they want prose, period.
Yeah.
And
or they want the video on the screen.
Yeah, but that's the third kind. That's the I don't want to read kind. But I'm talking about with the reading. And there are certain kids that are just simply not going to be interested. You know what? Honestly, if they were smart, they would hire these people to write prose books for them, not comics. If they want to tap that market, make that. I mean, look, let's be honest. Marvel and DC are superhero comic publishers.
Yes.
If they want the Raina Telgemeier or Rainbow Rowell, either hire them to make something that is not a superhero comic, or don't hire them and accept that that's not your market.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with that. I think you get Rainbow Rowell, you get her into your company, you say, Runaways is kind of teenish, go for it. And I think she tries. It's interesting. She will market and she will try and she will push. But at the end of the day, she's using somebody else's properties, not hers. So you're not going to get the best effort there. And you're putting it in a format that's just foreign to what she's able to move massively on her own. So you got the money, bring her in, say, you're going to develop a new property for us. We're going to get some of the rights, but you're in control. Make your own characters, make your own thing. What format you want to try? Do you want to try a graphic novel? Do you want to try a prose book? What do you want to do? But let the person who's actually succeeding in the market dictate that. Don't come in and have them try and write a floppy and then wonder why it's not translating.
Hey guys,
Wes and I were.
Sorry,
I could just say.
We gotta get back on topic.
We rambled. Yeah.
All right.
We're going far afield on this one. So let's bring it back to comic book retailers and dealing with the publishers. The final question in this one is going to be for Perch. Can you talk about the other outreach initiatives and programs indie publishers have that are helping support local comic shops?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty. There's certainly meet creator type incentives. Those are probably the most vanilla, but also the most successful. If you can do things like that, returnability, the no risk comic, undiscovered country is going to have you can return if you don't like it aspect to it. That's wonderful. More of that is great. Sending marketing materials. It's amazing that I get better marketing materials from unknown studios or people, or even a guy who's done some stuff on Indiegogo or Kickstarter who's just trying to get something going locally, and I'll get posters and I'll get buttons and the guy went and dropped $200 at some kind of merchandising to kind of promote the comic. So there's lots of little efforts, but the creator visits are going to be the most successful and long-term valuable for them, and just engagement with the store of saying, this is what we're trying to do, this is what you can expect, 16 issues this year, it's going to come out like this. Just that kind of outreach and information is the most powerful, popular thing for me.
Boom Studios is fantastic for outreach.
They do a great job, absolutely. And Image,
fantastic.
Image will by studio. Like Skybound has done a really good job for me. Others don't, but it's Boom has done well.
IDW sucks.
IDW used to be amazing, and
they used to be. But now it's just. The Mirage when they did Turtles was really good. Then when IDW took over, it just turned to crap.
Dark Horse was never very good at it for no apparent reason. They would do very little, and I have to go back to the '90s to think of things Dark Horse really did.
Yeah, it was just kind of, you know, the best you could hope was preview comics, you know, and maybe a poster, maybe, but you know, it was one of the things that I really liked about Boom was that they sent out like T-shirts for employees to wear, you know, for the new releases and stuff like that, and that was awesome because I'd be like, hey, free T-shirts here, put these on, you know, you're wearing these this Wednesday, you know. Because we've got X book coming out from Boom, and I've got like, you know, 50 copies coming in and some more on the way after that. You know, we need to move these, and that helps. It really does. And if Marvel did something like that, you know, I kind of pitched it to the Marvel person, you know, one of them, and I said, you know, hey, we got all these X titles coming out. Why don't we get some X-Men T-shirts and stuff like that, and get some other promotion? Nothing. So it was just, I mean, we got this typical, you know, you know, posters and stuff like that, but nothing that really pushed it over the top.
I've been real happy with Viz in the past for doing things. Viz took an approach, I remember at one point, where they got some manga that was being moved over, and they got the creators to sign all the comics, like thousands of them, and they basically didn't say anything. They didn't promote it in advance. And then a couple days before it dropped, there was a note delivered out saying, hey, just so you know, all the comics you're getting are autographed. Just out of nowhere, just to kind of promote number one. That was amazing. So stuff like that actually is a big deal.
So what do you guys think about the site visit teams? I know Valiant has a team that goes out to comic shops. I think Boom does as well. I think maybe Aftershock. Do you appreciate those? Do those help at all?
They've been hit or miss, honestly, and they're regional too. I think they'll. It's usually not all the shops. So you know, they will go to the bigger places. They'll go to your, you know, in my area, they'll go to Golden Age. They would go to Xanadu back in the day. You know, maybe Redbox, but they would not go to all the shops. Occasionally I've had visits. It's helpful. The challenge that the visits always are, and whether it's Diamond or whether it's any kind of junket that's going on, or even the summits that go on in cons, is you're talking to somebody who's getting feedback and they're writing things down, and then you're never really sure what happens from there. The feedback just goes. I always had the impression that they leave and they go to, like, you know, Jack in the Box and throw the feedback in the trash on the way. It's just, it never seems to really. There's no follow up, and so maybe other people have different experiences, but any kind of follow up is usually very perfunctory. It's like a mass email and then they just vanish. But I don't know, Pele, do you have a better story there?
Well, the only ones that really seemed to give a shit was Valiant. I had Valiant come in a few times, and that worked out really well. You know, we got a lot of really cool promotional materials out of it. You know, we got books that were not, you know, we got some very, very limited release books for store copies and stuff like that to do with whatever we wanted to. We ended up having drawings for them. And, you know, some stores I know that sold them, you know, marked them up like ungodly amounts and sold them. And I don't think that was the intention. But we did drawings for them, and that is extremely successful. And, you know, and they coordinated artists and writers for a short period of time, but then it stopped. And I think that's when Valiant hit the wall and they ran out of money.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, they're places, they're publishers that have really good ideas, but the problem is, I think that the financial limitations are what hit them. And then the ones that really can push forward and do like Image and stuff like that can really do the really deep dive into promotion and stuff like that, you know, they won't. So it's sad unless you're like a Midtown or somebody like that, a big publisher, big store.
So, you know, this has been a really great discussion, guys. I think the viewers are going to have learned a lot. Hopefully people catch us on the replay, because I think this is an important discussion. You know, when you go into your local comic shop and you see the manager or the owner, just realize the amount of hurdles that they have to go through to make sure that you get the best product, that you get the best service. predatory practices in Marvel, making ordering just a nightmare, to try and get the best comic covers available. You've got Diamond Comics distributors. It's just a nightmare to work with. Old, outdated model. Employees that want to help you out, but they don't have the ability or the capability to actually execute any of that. It sounds like Marvel doesn't really communicate at all with their retail partners. DC has a little bit more outreach, but it sounds like that somehow the indie publishers are more on the cutting edge. So I hope people come away appreciating their retail, their local comic shop owners and managers a little bit more. Maybe be a little bit more forgiving. Maybe when things don't exactly turn out your way, you don't know how the shape the comics came in. Maybe they didn't want to give you a damaged comic in your pull box, things like that. There are a lot of things out of their control. But before we wrap this up, I just wanted to just one last question for both of you guys. First for you, Pele. What advice would you have for those with a burning passion for comics and looking to open up their own comic shop?
Don't. Be a comic lover primarily, unless you just have lots and lots of capital. Whatever you think you're going to need, you're probably going to need at least 50% more. Location's very important, unless you've got your eye on a specific spot and with a particular mission statement involved, that you've got this plan, you've got a detailed business plan. You've got the capital available. You've got the comics available. If back issues should be important to you if you're going to be a complete.
Taylor, can you hold the thought for 1 second?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to Bird of Bloodhaven for the $2 super chat. Is that Golden Age Comics in Maryville? I think, Perch, you had the answer.
That's in Seattle in Pike Place Market. It's kind of the largest shop in the area.
All right. So thank you very much for helping support the channel. We very much appreciate it. And I hope you're enjoying the conversation. Back to you, Pele.
Yeah, I like Golden Age. Actually, they're good sell. They're a really good shop. Yeah, they're odd. The owner's a friend of mine. He's a good fella. It's definitely kind of step. It's almost like walking through time backwards. There's a lot of really interesting stuff and paraphernalia there, not just comics. So it's a pretty cool place. But anyway, if you're going to be going through all of that and you still want to open a comic shop, just realize that it's going to take an incredible amount of work, and you're not going to be able to do it on your own. And you're going to need somebody besides yourself to keep it open, to keep running. And unless you're just going to work 20 hours a day. So, it's just, if you get a windfall of money, you inherit $500,000 and, you want to get into running a comic book store, then go for it. If you don't, if you're scraping by and you think that it's something that's going to bail you out of your financial difficulties, it's not, and it's going to make it worse. So, that's basically my statement on that. What do you think, Perch?
No, I think it's a hard business. I think I as I've said, I did a video on it. You're expressing it here as well. It's okay to love comics and not dive into the business. It doesn't help. You will kill your love for that business by getting bogged down in a bunch of things that have nothing to do with comics that you may not understand. Running a business is hard. And so, if you want to take that leap, just go in with your eyes open. Far too many stores have closed or not succeeded, or you just see that the owner is just really miserable because they didn't know what to expect. And this was a case of Xanadu in Seattle for the last at least 5 years or so of that store's life. The owner looked miserable, just really miserable. And you felt bad for the guy because he's a nice guy and once had a passion for comics, but the whole industry, the business, whether it was Diamond or Marvel or programs or whatever, any of the things we've been talking about just killed off that passion. And I remember a lot of creators, Gail Simone, I remember vividly, during a con talking about, oh, you can't leave. You know, as he's expressing, maybe I should leave. And like, you can't give up. You can't give up. You got to stay in. And I guess the comment is give up. It's okay. If their passion is gone, there's no shame in giving up. It's just go to where your passion is. Don't grind for no reason against something that is clearly not for you. That's you know, if just go in with eyes open, I'd go in with $500,000. I agree, at least. You just
it's going to take some money. I mean, there are comic shops. I'm not going to. I'd never name names or anything like that. But you know, I've got a ledger of you know, I'll be blunt about this. I've got a ledger of comic shops that has borrowed money from me just to stay afloat.
Sure. Yeah, I've loaned plenty at different times as well,
and loaned inventory.
Yeah,
and you know, like I'll help them out because they're good people, they're friends of mine, and I don't want to see them fail. Even I know that sounds weird, and the comic book industry is a industry like none other. That your competition, even in the same town, are your friends, and you want to see them succeed, and even to the point to where, you know, this one shop owner, she has problems, and she was I can't pay for my new comics this week. I don't have the money. I know that, you know, I just had some bad situation that came along, you know, could you possibly help me? I said, sure, I will help you. I just write up a little simple note like this: you're borrowing X, and you know, just sign this. I'll help you take care of this, and you can get back up on your feet. And and that happens, and I don't think that happens in very many other industries, because, you know, there's a central focus there, even in the people that look at it more as a business. It comes down to a love of the medium and a love of the idea of the comic shop, you know, extends to the owners and the employees and those customers, and it's a community of people. And I don't like using the term community because it's overused, but it really is of retail connections there that aren't exactly friendships as much as they are like almost like family. And you help these people out, they help you out when they need them. You know, I had another store owner come in, you know, and actually help work at my shop one time because I had some people that were out sick, and he's like, hey, I can come over and help today. Sure, come on over. And he worked in my shop, you know, and it was great. You know, we had a good time. But
at the end of the day,
I actually sent one of my employees over to another shop one day to work there for a day because they you know, his wife was sick and he needed to see her in the hospital. So I had my assistant manager go over and I said, just open the shop, you know, do what you do here. And
so I want to right now I want to welcome Edwin Boyette to the show. Coming in a little bit late, we've had a fantastic discussion about the state of the comic book retail market and what retailers are dealing with. Is there anything that you wanted to add or questions for the two retailers that we have here as we start to wrap things up? I'm sorry you got in a little late.
Yeah, no worries. No, I was just thinking. I was listening to you talking about describing, you know, helping some of the other businesses in your area. How large is the town, and how many comic shops are in your kind of metro area?
Oh, the what we'd call the greater Knoxville area, which extends probably about, I'd say probably around 100 miles, about 100-mile radius around Knoxville. 16 shops.
Oh, wow.
15 shops.
Wow. So for comparison, I live in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Yeah.
And we've got about four shops that service the island with new comic books. And there are approximately 900,000 people here,
wow.
but we have a really good combination. Most of our shops have very good locations for foot traffic, but we also have Schofield Barracks, which is an Army base. We have Pearl Harbor, we have Hickam Air Force Base, and we have Kaneohe Marine Corps Base. So we've got a large supply of young people with disposable income.
Mhm.
And it's well supported.
That's a profoundly small number. That is something.
There are
I
a
didn't
couple
realize that.
There are a couple more shops, but they tend to sell, like, one shop is kind of like a combination used bookstore and back issue comic book store. Now, I think the challenge maybe that our shop owners might have here that maybe you and some of your competitors don't have is in Hawaii. Retail space is incredibly expensive.
That's a good point. I mean, you can get a 1,500 square foot floor space in the Knoxville area for $800 a month, $700 to $800 a month. That's very little. You know, you can even go lower than that if you have a smaller. We lost Edwin.
We did. Not sure what happened. In the meantime, I do want to thank Brian Withy. $5. Great listen while I was doing some econ homework. A smart man once said, "Small business isn't for the faint of heart; it's for the brave and the persistent." I couldn't agree with you more, and I think both of our retailers here would agree with that. And thank you so much for supporting the channel.
Thank you, Brian.
Like
Really appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. Running a business. If you want to love comics, start a club. Do that. Club is fine. Be in that business. Running a comic shop, you are running a store. You're running a business. You're running a retail industry. You have to understand what you're doing there. And if you're not prepared to run a business, don't run a business. In my market, there's 30 to 40 shops in the area. It's healthy in the sense of lots of competition, lots of people, lots of traffic. But it requires you run it like a business. And like I said earlier, if your heart is suddenly not in it, leave. You know, it's not for people who are just going through the motions.
It's not like opening a convenience store. It's not like even opening like a regular bookstore. You have to have a passion for what you're selling, and you have to have a knowledge for what you're selling that goes well beyond what you would do if you were selling printers or if you're selling, computer software or something like that. It's an amount of dedication that. And I'm not bragging about myself or anybody like that, but it's stuff that you pick up along the way and the information along the way. And, it takes months and months and months for me to get a new employee and to get them up to speed of what's going on in comics. But, once they do and they start, getting to know the customers and everything like that, they get integrated into that family of comics. But it's a very interesting, almost, I would say, unique, retail experience, because it's not just selling, it's also building the customer relationship. And if in that customer relationship, if it gets weird or it gets strained or something like that, they'll go to another shop.
Mm-hmm.
And you lose them, and or they push you down to one of their tertiary shops where they don't see them as often. So it's very interesting that way. I mean, if a shop clerk pisses you off at the convenience store where you get gas, that doesn't mean you're going to stop just going there. You're going to just get your gas, and go on. But for a comic book shop, there's a little bit more of an intimate type of environment, and there's conversation that goes on centered around the books. You don't sit and talk to the convenience store guy about the quality of gasoline, but you are going to sit and talk to the comic book store owner about the quality of the books that are coming out, because and there's a sense of entitlement there, and I don't think it's wrongly assumed. They have a right to come in and say, "This sucks. What happened?" And I'm here to listen to that, and and sometimes pass that on. But a lot of times it's like, well, if you don't like this, I've been reading this other thing, and I think that you would really enjoy this given your reading habits, and giving them an alternative, or like I said, pass it on the information to try to improve that character, that book that they do love. So, it's a different thing. Anyway, I'm rambling.
So some of the viewers might not actually know who Edwin is. He's a longtime consumer advocate for basically comic book readers. He's a very vocal personality on YouTube and on social media and stuff. So what's the state of the market in in Honolulu? Are you actively talking to the comic shop owners there?
Yeah. Our stores, our primary stores, our larger stores are doing, and our flagship store, Other Realms, is doing quite well. Again, they've got a great location. They've got a good balance of inventory. They've got a good staff, and they have got an endless supply of customers.
Mm-hmm.
They were a great shop. When I went on my honeymoon, my wife and I went to Hawaii on our honeymoon, and I went there. I visited that comic shop.
So since you've been there, I'm guessing that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was several years ago.
Yeah. They've moved down the road a little bit. The shopping center they were in was torn down to make multi-million-dollar high-rise apartments with an ocean view. But
it was a beautiful place. It was a beautiful location they had. That was like it reminded me of Tropic Comics. It used to be in South Florida. They had a location that was literally a stone's throw from the beach in Key Largo. They actually had to move to Marathon Key, but yeah, they actually it got replaced by a multi-million-dollar restaurant because the retail space was just too valuable.
The personality factor is probably works for them too. Most of their shop employees are friendly. They're not overwhelming for some people, but they're definitely friendly, outgoing. They suggest stuff. I heard every time I'm there and I just kind of observe behavior, I notice them recommending different books and stuff. And when I come in, they'll tease me. They'll tease me about blowing up Twitter and such.
Absolutely.
Yeah, actually, my one of my good customers was actually talking about you. He goes, "What do you think about Comics Grandpa?"
I love it.
I said, Comics Grandpa. I said, "Oh, you mean Edwin?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, I like Edwin. Edwin's always motivational. He always has the guy's a minister. He's a comic book collector and he's a minister. And he's like, yeah, I always like listening to Edwin because he always has a message about faith and stuff like that when he's talking. But yeah, we have that conversations and stuff like that about the personalities that are on Twitter and in the comic shop because it's anything that touches the comic book industry is fair game for comic book shop conversation. So
how hard is it now? And I'm sorry if I'm hijacking here. I apologize. I'll ask this question and then I'll zip my lip.
No.
How hard is it to direct people to other things now? Like, so somebody walks in and they've got like a typical pull list of the big titles. How hard is it to encourage somebody to check out like maybe something from Vault or Alterna or Antarctic or some of these, because there's all kinds of groovy stories being made. A lot of times I talk about crowdfunded comic books, but there's all kinds of groovy indie comic books that are being made and published every single month.
Mm-hmm.
Alterna really helped with that because Alterna has their retail boxes that they send to retailers now, the counter boxes, and those are awesome. And we get the materials from them. And Peter Samedi is just a fantastic dude. And, that helps. But overall, the indie comic market has improved vastly as far as the quality of it. You have books. Oh my God, the richness of the horror market right now. And we're not talking about gore splatter comics. We're talking about really good thriller comics. You know,
Right in the forefront of that too.
stories that are just fantastic right now. That just, you know, and I'll tell you what, they have actually influenced Marvel and DC to up their game in the suspense market. You know, that's why Immortal Hulk blew up, and it started becoming the great suspense comic and great horror comic that it is, because how great the indie comics were becoming at that. The Plot is a fantastic book. You have, you know, oh my gosh, these Savage Shores, you know,
That's my jam.
these boom, people buy that stuff. It doesn't have the Marvel and DC appeal overall, I would say. You know, it's still a superhero driven market, but there's enough interest there to where indie comics can thrive. And we see that. I see that month over month, quarter over quarter, them gaining ground. And it's not that they're taking sales away from Marvel and DC. It's that they're being added to the people's main, you know, monthly pulls. And if I can get an extra 3 or 4 books, 5 books added on to what they would normally get for their core reading, you know, that's the extra money there for the indies to really shine.
Perch, are you seeing the same thing with growth and stabilization in the indie market?
Yeah, there's growth in the indie market. I think that the indie market has a lot of upside right now. So when we see growth, we get excited on one level because it's incremental, significantly incremental to what was happening before. The challenge is there is a ceiling there. And so a lot of stores are hitting this now where indie comics can come up and they can get more exposure, but they're going to hit this kind of artificial ceiling that they need to figure out ways to break through, whether it's more marketing, distribution, getting into the consciousness of people. Unfortunately, the market has been trained now to listen to what is popular in pop culture and then respond with the comics. That's an interesting challenge. It definitely plays to Marvel and DC's benefit with what they do. It also makes them lazy in terms of their marketing because they can just rely on the parent to do what they're going to do. So the indie market, there's a lot of upside there, but there is this kind of intangible other thing. And whether it's finding a better way to distribute, I think if the indie market can come together and several of those publishers can do what Peter's doing, find other distribution channels, get into more places, that's going to be a big deal. Or really ignite digital, or there's a few different things that they can do. I think digital growth has the best hope with the indie market over the traditional publishers because they're just not equipped to deal with what's there, and they're also going to have egos that won't let them play well with the Amazons and others. So they'll find the chance to do their own platform. So there's a big opportunity there.
If you'd asked me 5 years ago if an indie horror comic would sell, you know, 25, 30, 50 copies a month, I'd have said, no way. There's no way in hell this is going to go. You know? But now, with what I see, these Savage Shores, you know, the last issue came out, it sold 40 copies. And that doesn't sound like amazing money, but that is impressive for an indie comic. And
that's a vault comic. I've been a big proponent of that Resonance series.
Absolutely, that was great.
And the Blood Realm from Alterna. Man, that turned into a juggernaut. And if that was an ongoing series, you know, I would sell over 50 copies.
It basically is. The next volume will be out in January.
Yep.
Yeah, I've noticed that I switched shops a couple of months ago, and one that I'd been at for 20 years, just because I was kind of tired of making the drive out there. And now I still have some of my pull list there, but I decided to add, I have another store locally that's now my more primary store. And the one thing I did was I put a couple of the indie things that I was not having on my pull list at the other shop, stuff like Alterna. I put literally everything from Alterna. Literally, when he was asking me to fill out the thing, I just wrote everything from Alterna. You guys figure out what it is. I don't care.
To answer
and
Edwin's Oh, go ahead.
one of the things that I found is I did that with like Punchline and Rags and one or two other ones. And all of a sudden, they started putting them on the shelf, and I've seen them moving as a result, because I guess, they're looking at it as people that have pull lists are kind of generally going to be the market for for stuff like that. So you might be able to, if you can get 3 people with it on the pull list, maybe you'll sell one off the wall.
Punchline, you mentioned that it's either issue 12 or issue number 13. The cover for that book has actually been drawn. It is a double page cover, right? So it'll be a wraparound cover, actually drawn by a comic book shop manager, Brad Ashworth.
Oh, dope.
Man.
There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent bleed over from comic shop employees to the to actual production, or even not even production, but fan art, really high quality fan art work.
Sure. A lot of comic store owners become owners after a desire to get into the industry, and just maybe a realization that they can't get there, or it's just not going to work for them on some level. So you generally have people who have some skills, and if they're good with their store and their market and their customers, then they have a deep understanding of what makes comics sell, which translates very nicely to writing. One of the best things that the big publishers could do right now, as they're struggling to find a new market, is reach out to the shops, find the owners, hire them as a advisor or an editor advisor or something, just bring them on to help advise. They know what's selling because the traffic is going through their store. So have those people help guide your marketing and your outreach programs, rather than bringing in somebody with no experience or was working in fast food 2 years before. That's and in many cases, the retailers would do that job for free or close to free because they just know it would help their market in the end.
So, guys,
I was
we're going to start wrapping it up.
one final thing for Edwin. One thing that I like to do for as far as indie comics, because I know that they need a little bit more of a boost than Marvel or DC, is over there near next to where the subscriber boxes are for the pull lists. I'll put the indie comics there that I think they're hot, that are really moving, going, everything like that. I'll put those over there next to where I know that the people that have the pull lists are going to be going, and I'll have them stacked up there and available to them immediately, so they can just add up to their list. They can add up to what they're picking up that week, and I think that in particular helps out tremendously, rather than having it in a different part of the shop.
Very cool.
All right, Pele. Let's hear your weekly comic book recommendations. What are you recommending at the shop?
Oh, okay. The X titles, all the mutant titles are selling really, really well. I know that it's a dead horse and everything like that at this point, but they're turning out pretty well. Some are better than others. I liked the Excalibur book. A lot of other people didn't. But it's the Immortal Hulk got wrapped up, and it's really weird. And it kind of like threw everybody for a loop, but I think that this gearing up for a different change, for a different pitch as far as tone and stuff like that going for. Hulk is going cosmic, basically, and I think that's going to be interesting going forward. It's going to be an interesting story. I think it's going to be important because of there's a significant death. I don't want to be any spoilers. There's a significant death in the last issue. Anyway, yep. That's look into the X titles right now. I think that this week that's going to be that's what I want to recommend. Because if you like X-Men, if you like the mutant books, then this is a substantial starting off point, and it's going to be where that particular arm of Marvel is going to be heading for the foreseeable future.
Awesome. Edwin, do you have any comic books you want to recommend this week for the viewers?
Go back if you can still find it in your stores, and please do go take a look at that Resonance from Vault Comics. It wasn't super widely printed, but if you like that post-apocalyptic stuff if you're missing The Walking Dead, if you like movies like The Postman, it's definitely a comic book written for adults. And great read, beautiful book. Resonance by Book.
That new series, Undiscovered Country, it's kind of similar in the vein.
Awesome. Yeah, that is an excellent series. I've been reading it. It's what was the Sandra Bullock Netflix movie?
Bird Box.
Bird Box.
Bird
It's
Box.
like Bird Box, but good. How's
Yes.
that?
Yes, that's a pithy description. Yes.
That's how I describe it. All right, Doc, what are you recommending this week?
This week I'm on a little bit of a Brett Booth kick, so I'm going to recommend Flash Forward, which is still pretty good. I'm going to recommend Bloodshot, but only if you just don't read any of the words.
Yeah, don't read the dialogue.
Don't read any of the dialogue. Just look at the pictures and make up your own dialogue in your head, and it's spectacular. And also, no, this is some stuff that you can go, since I always got to do some back issues. If you can always find these in probably dollar bins. X-Men Unlimited. It was their kind of quarterly or bi-monthly kind of anthology X-Men book from the 90s. Issues 25 through 29. I recommend going and pick them up. They're great. They're amazing art and just real fun, cool fucking story. Sorry. Excuse the language. So yeah, there's my recommends right now. I can't recommend Excalibur because it looked so bloody boring. And although actually, you know what? X-Force comes out this week. Go buy X-Force.
And New Mutants.
Go buy X-Force.
All right, Perch, what are you recommending?
A couple things. So, I mean, for Marvel, we got New Mutants and X-Force coming out. New Mutants is going to be probably the more consequential book. If you followed Hickman and you're really interested in that, there's a pretty big storyline. Looking at the preview, got my hands on an early issue, so it's a really solid book. It's got the feel of not the Claremont New Mutants, but when it was relaunched right around the Grant Morrison time, it has that feel. So if that's the kind of book you like, then that's probably for you. X-Force is interesting. It's okay. I like it, but there's a lot going on there. You'll see. Ghost Rider #2. People like the first one. That's out this week. And of course, if you're a collector, I think the Doom series, which is kind of all over the place, but that's going to probably be consequential for you a year or so for now. I would just throw out there. On the DC side, Deathstroke's got a good storyline that's kicking off. That's something to check out. And if you are a Bendis fan, then you got Legion of Superheroes #1, and you get to see that very beautiful train wreck of a comic. Undiscovered Country is great from Image. Strange Skies from Boom is really nice. You may not have heard of that one. That's a good one. Crone from Dark Horse is also got an interesting story to tell. And then I'll follow Doc's lead on back issues. I am shocked by the amount of people who've never heard of Return to Big Nothing, the Punisher story that Marvel did a long time ago with Mike Zeck. That's a comic that is becoming easier to find, even at half-price books. I saw that the other day for $4. It was tragic. Go get that. It's a great comic.
All right, so I agree. Jeff Loveness, who wrote Strange Guys over East Berlin, he also wrote Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Death of Superman, that was out this week. That was an excellent read. I also like The Last God, the first fantasy book from DC Black Label. It's spectacular. It's one of the best illustrated comics I've read this year. And also, I will recommend Batman and the Outsiders Annual. Brian Hill delivers a very good comic. You don't need to read the rest of the series. It's a fun story about Katana, and it's got a little bit of Black Lightning in it as well. So that should wrap us up. So, Edwin, if people don't know where to find you, where can they find you on YouTube and social media?
Yeah, if you just search by my name on Twitter or YouTube, I will pop up somewhere. Give it about a week. I've been engaged in some Twitter fisticuffs, so let my feed come down too, so you're not looking at a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, please, let's everybody stop all that nonsense. Please.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Let's get back to the other stuff.
it's very ugly, and it's not even anybody in here's fault. It's a lot of nasty people that just want to see bloodshed, and I don't think that's right.
Things build on themselves. It is what it is, but let's call it a day, please.
Yep.
It would be beautiful. Pele, where can people find you, buddy?
Find me at @just_Pele on Twitter and Instagram. And Twitter, it's kind of mix of comics and politics and stuff like that. And I'll, kind of joke around with people, or I'll get into a spat myself. But Instagram is largely new acquisitions and a lot of books, that I've cleaned and pressed and get them ready for grading and such. And we talk about different comic situations associated with the hobby and collecting, and comic collecting advice and all that nature. So Instagram probably just for pure comics.
Well, I want to say
one thing I want to interject is True Believers. There's great True Believers out this week too. The X-Men. Go look at those.
I want to say thank you very much to Skip and Tosh for the $1.99 super chat. People can find Edwin in the Batcave. He's Robin. He does have a distinguished look about him. He has a wonderful hairline. Edwin's hair game was on point this morning, and he definitely has the look of an older, wiser Nightwing, in my opinion. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely has the hair, I'll tell you. I wish I had a hairline like that.
Absolutely. We all want to have hair like that, in the future. But unfortunately, only Edwin gets that power.
Hey, and if he's really lucky, he's also got Dick Grayson's ass. So,
hey, Edwin,
Yes.
you gotta post that on Twitter. We want to
we want to see if you got Dick
no.
Grayson's ass.
No.
All right.
Love you, brother.
Who's left? Doc, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at ScienceJesus. Yeah.
There you go. Perch, where can people find you, buddy?
I'm on Twitter at Comic Perch. Always happy to have people ask questions, suggestions. I'm on YouTube at Comic Perch, so you'll notice a trend there. And lots of content. Love the feedback. I've got a pretty killer interview coming up with I will call the top DC writer, but I'll leave it there.
Ooh.
Tom King, I like it.
Oh yeah, Tom King for sure.
Yeah, he means the real top DC writer. It's Bendis, of course.
Of course.
It's painful.
Yeah. Anyway, some good stuff coming up, and I'm going to to preference. I'm going to be talking to some people who I think many don't like, also future creators, but they do have some interesting perspectives. And to their credit, I will always credit people who give me the time and also are willing to disagree in a polite way. So there'll be some good names, I think, coming up.
All right. And you, of course, can find me right here on Thinking Critical YouTube. If you want to follow me on social media, you can go at Wes_Fun_TC. And if you want to engage us on Discord, talk about comic books, movies, all kinds of stuff, out of the realm of Twitter, where it can be a little bit more intimate, we can have personal conversations. You go into do voice chats, go join our Discord server, and that is in the video link below. Thank you all for joining us today. Salamat po. And I'm out.